Chairman Rowena Brebner, meeting producer, just to confirm that we are live now. The live stream has started.
Right. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this virtual meeting of the West Area Planning Committee. Before consideration of today's business, I'll outline the protocols for the meeting. Today's meeting is being live streamed to the public via Microsoft Teams and is also being recorded. When members are speaking, they may choose to use their video. If the Council's live stream fails during the meeting and we cannot share the proceedings, I'll adjourn the meeting so that access can be restored. If the issue cannot be resolved, I'll halt the meeting and the remaining business will be concluded at a future date. If a member experiences a technical issue, I'll adjourn for a short period to try to re-establish their connection. As I call for members to speak, I'll remind you to switch on your microphone. If for some reason you cannot be heard, the Democratic officer will advise you. The vote will be taken by roll call of committee members by the Democratic officers. Members must be present for the duration of the discussion on each planning application in order to be able to vote. We have public speakers at this meeting today, and they'll be joining the meeting by telephone. Where a member has declared a non-registrable interest, a disclosable pecuniary interest, or an interest by virtue of any trade union membership in a matter that they must leave the virtual meeting. Their departure will be confirmed and they'll be invited to rejoin the meeting at the appropriate time. To confirm the procedure for today's meeting is that members of the committee who wish to speak on an item should indicate by using the raise your hand function, which is being monitored by the Vice Chair. Any members not on a committee or unable to use their raise your hand function who wish to ask a question should indicate by typing X in the chat box. Before we start today's meeting, I'll ask the Democratic Services Officer to ask the committee members to confirm they are present and state their electoral division. Over to you, Angela.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll start with you.
Yes, good morning again. It's Roger Harding, Newlyn Moseley Division.
Thank you. Councillor Eakin-Smith.
Good morning, David Eakin-Smith, Vice Chairman and member for 11.
Councillor Bastin.
Good morning, John Bastin, Cornwall Councillor for Constantine, Morning and Budop.
Councillor Robinson.
Richard Robinson, Councillor for St Ives East.
Councillor Code.
Graham Code, I'm Councillor for Hale South.
Councillor Hawkins.
Councillor Helen Hawkins for St Barry and substitute Councillor Duffin.
Councillor Hurd.
Councillor John Hurd, member for Camborne Pendarvis.
Councillor Kaczmarek.
Councillor Mark, Cornwall Councillor for Caharrock, Gwenup and St Day.
Thank you. Councillor Martin.
Good morning, Councillor John Martin for Helston South.
Councillor Nicholas.
Good morning, Councillor Sue Nicholas, Division Member for Maritime Paranos now.
Councillor Pascoe.
Good morning, Councillor Lionel Pascoe for Gwynedd, Gwydion and St Earth.
Councillor Simmons.
Yes, good morning, Councillor John Simmons for Penryn East and Moyler.
Thank you. Councillor John Thomas.
Yeah, Cornwall Councillor John Thomas, electoral divisional member for Lanarn Stidians.
Councillor Mike Thomas.
Good morning, Councillor Mike Thomas for Helston North.
And Councillor Tudor.
Good morning, Councillor Tudor, Councillor for Three Milestone and Glowerth. I'm subbing for Councillor Wallace this morning.
Thank you. We also have Councillor David Thornby as adjoining electoral division member for the first item, and Councillor Loveday Jenkin, electoral division member for the third item. And I believe Linda Taylor will be joining us later in the meeting. She's the local division member for items 5 and 6. I'll just go through the list of officers. Obviously, there's myself, Angela Saunders from Democratic Services. We have Mark Broomhead, Mark Rule, Peter Gregory, Scott Jenkins, Adam Carlyon and Chantal McLennan from Planning, Ben Curnow from Legal, Hugh Gibbon from Highways and Nikki Manel from Affordable Housing. That's it. Thank you, Chairman.
Sorry, Chairman. Angela, you forgot Matthew Stevenson, who is leading on the first application.
Apologies. Thank you.
Right. Right, thank you. We go on to agenda item 1, and that's apologies. Are there any?
Yes, Chairman, we've had 3. Councillor Biggs, who's being substituted by Councillor Robinson, Councillor Duffin, whose substitute is Councillor Hawkins, and Councillor Wallace, whose substitute is Councillor Tudor.
Yeah, right, thank you. With that, we go on to agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Are there any? No, appear to be no. Right, we go on to agenda item 3, and that's the minutes of the previous meeting, which that's on pages 5 to 19, which I'll go through them page by page. It's just to agree that they are true and correct. So that's on page 5, page 6, page 7, page 8, page 9, page 10, page 11, page 12, page 13, page 14, page 15, page 16, page 17, page 18 and page 19. So if somebody would move that it is a true and correct record of the meeting. Please.
Move it, Chairman. Councillor Thomas.
Yeah. I've got a second.
Happy to second, Chairman.
Thank you. Right, so it's been moved and seconded. All those in favour, please show.
Yeah, Chairman, that looks like they've been moved. If everybody could put their hand down.
Mine seem to be sticking a bit, Angela. Is mine down?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, right, thank you. So with that, we go on to agenda item 4, that's applications for consideration. And the first one today, it's PA 19/10381, Barrett David Wilson Homes, that's Hillhead Road, Budok. And Mark Ball, I think you're taking us on, through that one. Can you hear me, Mark?
I can, Chairman, yes.
Yeah. Are you sharing your screen with us, Mark? If you'd like to just try that, please. Yeah. Right, I confirm that we can hear you and we can see the screen, Mark. So when you're ready, over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. This application has twice been brought before this committee, on 16th of November last year and 11th of January this year, where it was resolved that it should be deferred for further consultation to take place in respect of the previously approved prioritisation works on Cagiliac Road in relation to the approved housing scheme being developed by Coastline Housing on the north side of Cagiliac Road. And that's to consider if there is scope for amending these works with the aim of optimising traffic flow along this route. Since the meeting held on the 11th of January, officers have held further discussions with the applicant, Coastline, Transportation and the electoral division member in an effort to secure the best possible highway solution along this road. This is considered to be achieved by providing the required access to the Coastline scheme, whilst minimising the narrowing of Cagiliac Road in the process and securing the most appropriate prioritisation and pedestrian infrastructure works on Cagiliac Road. Now, I'll quickly run through the presentation because members will be familiar with the scheme, having considered the application on 2 previous occasions. The focus will be upon the highway issues and in particular the proposed prioritisation works on Cagiliac Road. So as a recap, the application seeks full planning permission for the erection of 133 dwellings, including 47 affordable homes, that's 35% provision, with associated access, estate roads, car parking, infrastructure and open space on agricultural land to the west of Falmouth. So the key issues to be considered are the suitability of the location of the site for residential development, layout, scale, design, appearance, landscaping and impact on the character of the area, highway and access issues, potential impacts upon neighbour amenity, affordable homes, public open space, education and health infrastructure, ecology including biodiversity net gain, flood risk and surface water drainage and foul drainage, potential impacts upon a European protected site, archaeology and potentially contaminated land. So the site's located to the west of Falmouth. It's edged and hatched in red here. So you have Falmouth down here and Penryn to the north. It's a closer view of the site showing the development in the context of existing neighbouring developments. So a few dwellings to the north here, and then you have dwellings on Cagilliac Road here, and the existing development here. That's the aerial view of the site, and we can see just to the south here that the Eve Park development, which is a large residential development in Falmouth, is currently under construction just to the south of the site. Now, this is the Falmouth and Penryn strategy map from the Cornwall Site Allocations Development Plan document, and this plan shows the allocations and existing commitments for both Falmouth and Penryn. So the application site is here. It forms part of this larger allocation here for 200 dwellings on the western edge of Falmouth. So that confirms that the site's already been assessed and found to be suitable in principle for residential development. And that shows the whole of that FPH3 allocation. So this part of the site here, this is the application site, this part of the allocation. And I'll show in a moment that this part is developed here, this is being built out, and this part of the site which could yet come forward. So this is a wider master plan. We have here 104 dwellings which have recently been completed and occupied on this part of the allocation. This part is the coastline site, which has recently received reserve matters approval and is about to start this year. And this is the application site here, and this is the part of the site which could potentially come forward in the future. Here's the application site layout plan. Now, members will note from the report that a lot of officers have done a lot of work with the applicant in terms of improving this layout in order to address some of the concerns that were raised by a number of consultees. That's included altering the layout to provide this sort of tree line street through the site here, improving the amount of reinforcement of planting and new Cornish hedgerows along the site frontage and around the boundaries, and just general improvements to the layout in order to provide a more acceptable scheme when assessed against the relevant policies and design guidance. We have a large area of public open space to be provided down here with an equipped play area in this part of the site here. These are some of the house types. There's traditional in form. Use palette of materials is considered to be acceptable, and it gives a good variety of developments of building types across the site. And you'll see from these street scene elevations here, you can see how these house types would sit in context in the street here. It's very similar to the Eve Park development to the south, so it's a continuity in terms of design and layout and so on. Now, turning to the focus, which is the highway and access issues. Here we have the application site, and down here is the Eve Park development, which is currently under construction. This is Hillhead Road running across here, and here's Cagilliac Road in this position here. There'll be a new site access formed in this position here on Hillhead Road. This would require the removal of some existing hedgerow and trees along the site frontage, but we've negotiated the provision of additional Cornish hedgerow along the back edge of the footways here in order to improve the local distinctiveness and to soften the impact of the development. New access in this position here, there will be a new footway provided along the north side of Hillhead Road, running along here to this point. There will then be a new crossing point provided here to enable pedestrians to safely cross the road. Then the footway will continue along here and along here, joining in a moment. I'll show you on the next slide with the proposed works on Cagilliac Road. So that provides a safe means of pedestrian access up to this point. I'll also point out that once the Eve Park development is completed, pedestrians will have an alternative route through this site to access the town. So there'll be another option there for pedestrians. Now, turning to the proposed traffic prioritisation of footway works on Cagilliac Road. We've obtained this plan now, which more clearly shows these works. So hopefully it's clear for members to understand exactly what will be going on here. I should point out that these prioritisation works have been approved as part of the coastline development here. So these are the works that are secured by planning condition on the consent for this development here. So this is what will be delivered as part of the coastline scheme. This would involve the provision of a new footway on the south side of Cagilliac Road, which would connect with both the footway on Hillhead Road and the existing footway further down to the east on Cagilliac Road. So there'll be a new section of footway on here, which isn't shown on this plan. The new section of footway to be provided on on the south side of Cagiliac Road, which will then link in here with the existing pedestrian footway running along Cagiliac Road. So a new link here, which enables people to safely access the town and join with this existing footway on Cagiliac Road. The provision of the new footway on the south side of Cagiliac Road would result in the narrowing of the carriageway from its existing width of approximately 5.5 metres, as it is here and here, to a minimum effective width of approximately 4.1 metres for a length of approximately 16 metres, which is this section here. So it runs from here to here. It's approximately 16 metres there, so a minimum width of 4.1 metres for a length of approximately 16 metres, and before it would taper back out here to the 5.5 metre width. So this would require the introduction of formal priority working with a priority given to eastbound traffic to allow vehicles to pass along this stretch of road. So traffic approaching from the east would have to stop here to enable any oncoming traffic to negotiate the narrowing here. This would require the removal of a section of hedgerow on the northern side of the Cagiliac Road, and that's along here, in order to ensure the narrowing of the carriageway is kept to the minimum length possible, whilst ensuring the retention of the existing trees. So officers have negotiated improvements, which include a new Cornish hedgerow to replace the hedgerow that we lost, and which will be provided behind a new roadside footway. So that's this green we can see here. So the new hedgerow will continue along here and along here, which minimises the impact of the hedgerow being removed along this frontage. The distance between the junction of Cagiliac Road with Hillhead Road and the start of the prioritisation works on Cagiliac Road would be approximately 48 metres. So that's the distance from here, the junction, to this point here. So it gives a good long stretch of road there for to avoid any potential impacts of queuing on this junction. This distance combined with the reduced length of carriageway narrowing would mean that traffic is much less likely to need to queue when approaching from the west. Now, the alternative prioritisation scheme that was previously proposed by the applicant required the narrowing of the carriageway to a minimum effective width of approximately 3.5 metres, and that's shown on this drawing here. And that was for a length of approximately 47 metres, so that distance from here to here is approximately 47 metres, and a much narrower carriageway here at 3.5 metres, and a much longer section of narrowing. There would also be an informal priority hit at this point here, with traffic at either end having to give way depending on who arrives at the pinch point first. So this is a much more significant length of prioritisation and narrowing than is the case with this scheme here, which is secured by the coastline development. And this is what we're seeking to secure as part of the current application, to ensure that no dwellings on the application sites are occupied until these works are provided. And that's a significant difference when compared to what was originally proposed here. Damn it. Now, right. Sorry, bear with me a moment. So officers consider that the prioritisation scheme secured as part of the coastline planning permission would be a more appropriate solution than the previously considered prioritisation scheme put forward by the applicant. And this view is supported by the electoral division member. This is because the previously approved prioritisation work significantly reduced the length of carriageway narrowing and would provide increased space for any traffic approaching the prioritisation scheme from the west, thereby providing space for any queue without going beyond the junction. And the applicant has agreed to the inclusion of a clause within the Section 106 agreement that prevents the proposed dwellings being occupied until the prioritisation and footway works on Cagiliac Road that will be delivered by the coastline scheme have been completed. It's acknowledged that the priority working will have an impact on the flow of traffic. This will result in the slowing of vehicles. However, given that this area will become increasingly residential, with people utilising the footpath and crossing, the highways officer considers that lower passing speeds will be a benefit in terms of the pedestrian movement. The approved highway works would reduce the average time in which vehicles would need to stop at the prioritisation, and this, along with the distance between the road space between the junction and narrowing, will make queuing beyond the T-junction much less likely to occur. And it's also considered that the retention of a minimum width of 4.1 metres of the carriageway would not prevent larger vehicles from continuing to use this route. The highways officer has no objections to the proposed access arrangements and the proposed off-site highway works, and considers that the local road network is capable of accommodating the extra traffic generated without resulting in undue operational or safety problems. With regard to impacts on the development on the wider road network, the applicant's highways consultants have provided a technical note explaining that the existing road junctions in the locality have sufficient capacity to cater for the increased traffic generated by the proposed development, and that's detailed in the Highway and Access Issues section of the committee report. And the Falmouth and Penryn Transport Strategy sets out how cumulative impacts of the various proposed developments in Falmouth and Penryn, which includes this current scheme, would be addressed. So the various measures in the strategy include junction improvements, bus improvements, rail improvements, a town-wide walking and cycling network, and publicity and promotion of sustainable transport options. Now, a number of these measures have already been completed, including improvements at the Trellaswell, Union Corner and Kernick roundabouts. So the applicant would pay the required financial contribution towards the Falmouth and Highway Transport Strategy, and this contribution will be used towards the provision of sustainable transport measures in the vicinity of the development as set out in the strategy. So in conclusion on the highway issues, the proposed development is considered to ensure a safe and suitable means of access that will be provided and will not cause significant adverse impact on the local road network, including taking into account the cumulative future growth. Now quickly run through some photographs. That's looking north across the application site. That's the north boundary of the application site, the existing residential development beyond it. Now this shows Hillhead Road, top one looking northeast and the bottom view looking southwest. This is the section of hedgerow here that would need to be removed to provide the access. So there'll be a new footway provided along this frontage, a crossing point approximately here, and then footway continuing down towards the Cagiliac Road junction. This is the Cagiliac Road Hillhead junction. So that footway will continue down here, will cross over this verge here, and then that footway will continue down Cagiliac Road here before joining with the existing footway, which is down here. Now the coastline scheme is on the other side of this hedge here. This section of hedge up to about here would need to be removed. New access would come out in this point here. And then we would have prioritisation for this short stretch here, which is about 16 metres, as I said in the episode previously. And this would be where the prioritisation works will be taking place at this point here. But this hedgerow will be re-provided and set back behind the footway on the frontage here in order to minimise the impact of the loss of that hedgerow. So finally, the balance of considerations. The site forms part of a larger allocation for residential development in the site allocations DPD to meet the housing needs of Falmouth as set out in the local plan, and it's therefore previously been assessed and found suitable for residential development in principle. The layout, scale, appearance and landscaping of the development is considered to be good quality, and the scheme will be appropriate in terms of the character of the area and will ensure that any visual and landscape impact will be minimised. The means of access is considered to be acceptable, and the increased traffic movements associated with the development will be able to be accommodated by the local highway network without resulting in undue operational or safety issues. And importantly, the proposed off-site highway works will ensure that safe and suitable pedestrian access will be provided. The affordable homes and on-site public open space provision meet the requirements of the planning policies and are important public benefits of the scheme. There'll be financial contributions towards education infrastructure, health infrastructure, transport infrastructure, and towards mitigating recreation impacts upon the Far and Healthford Special Area of Conservation in accordance with the requirements of the development plan. There'll be no material adverse impacts upon the amenities of either existing nearby residential occupiers, land uses, or prospective occupiers of the dwellings. The development would result in the loss of a small amount of agricultural land, but that impact is outweighed by the benefits of the scheme. Any adverse impacts upon ecology will be mitigated and a biodiversity net gain will be achieved. However, on-site biodiversity net gain will be less than the 10% requirement set out in the Council's DPD. But in order to address the shortfall in biodiversity net gain, a financial contribution will be secured in order to create compensatory biodiversity units on separate lands of the application site. So in conclusion, the recommendation is to approve, subject to the signing of the Section 106 planning obligation and subject to conditions as set out in the report. Thank you, Chairman.
Right, thank you, Mark. We've got several speakers on this one. There's nobody in the objectors slot, so we go on to parish and town council representatives, and the first speaker on that one is Councillor Alan Jewell from Falmouth Town Council. Can you hear me, Alan?
Good morning, Councillor Harding. Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. Usual format, I'm sure you're aware of it. It'll be 3 minutes and we'll remind you when you've got 30 seconds to go.
Thank you much indeed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, fellow committee members. This is, as Mark Bull said, this is the third time, hopefully it's the third time lucky for whoever's going to get the result on this. On the 11th of January's meeting, I've read the minutes and it was resolved at the meeting that it was going to be deferred for further consultation to take place with all interested parties in resort to prioritise the roadworks for Cagiliac Road. And I was led to believe that it was going to be the ward members, the town, and neighbouring divisional members. But the first I heard about it, when I had an email from Laura Potts on the 18th of February. And she says in her email, I've been dealing with the coastline application and I've taken up discussions which have been underway between officers, coastline, and Barrett's prior to you considering it or meeting in March. The plans shown by you, just shown by Mark Bull, clearly show the new revised priority works which are hoping to go ahead. Councillor Bastian has been kept up to date with the discussions. As I said, I was led to believe that the town and Burdock Parish and adjoining divisional members would be involved in these discussions, which we clearly were not. We were just given this email with the plans. There you are. That's what we're going to do. That's what's going to committee. So I didn't feel that we were really involved with that at all. I contacted Laura about these concerns, and she said, yes, well, that's what's going to happen on the 8th of March. So on the 1st of March, we took these plans to our town planning committee, and they rejected it unanimously. They felt that, like I said, they hadn't been consulted, and they thought there was alternatives to be had. I did say to Laura that she's dealing with a coastline application, which was passed in 2018, and we as a town were not consulted. And she did say that that wasn't really best practice. I think that really the road narrowing on this scheme, as we've been saying all the way through, is not acceptable for this development and future developments and the traffic coming in from the outline areas of Mornan, Constantine. To narrow the road is a no-go at all. I don't think we should narrow this road at all. There's been some emails sent around. I think Councillor Dave Saunders is going to follow up with some suggestions.
30 seconds left.
We had an informal discussion with the neighbours on the Coquillette Road, which he will be able to fill in. But as I said from the outset, this scheme, coastline scheme, should have gone through the Barrett scheme, which is already being built out. And it's a shame it's come to this, but hopefully with the fullness of time and the speakers coming in ahead of me now, you will make your mind up to refuse this application, because we cannot narrow this road. We've got to keep it at the same width.
That's 3 minutes, Chairman.
Thank you, Now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Alan. If you can just hang on, just in case there are any questions for clarification.
Yes, no worries.
Has any member got a question for clarification of Alan? David?
I can't see any, Chairman.
No. Okay. With that, we go on to the next speaker, who's Councillor John Langan from Penryn Town Council. Councillor Langan, can you hear me? Councillor Langan, can you hear me? Rowena?
Chairman, if he wants to press *6 to unmute his telephone, we should be able to hear him.
Yeah. But did you hear that, Councillor Langan? Press *6 on your telephone. Hopefully you can hear me now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you, Councillor. Good morning, welcome to the meeting. It'll be the normal format. You'll have 3 minutes and we'll give you a prompt when it's 30 seconds to go. So when you're ready, please start.
Thank you. We've listed a few aspects that we were hoping to get incorporated into the design, accepting it's a neighbouring parish. But our particular concerns were safe pedestrian access on Hill Head, and pedestrian access and cycle links to existing services, and also concerns regarding the infrastructure. So I think, to be honest with you, the Falmouth Town Council has said what we would want to echo strongly as we can. It's a route out of Penryn and into Falmouth and the coast and the beaches, and to bring it down to a single lane for whatever length, in our opinion, would be ridiculous. We would strongly encourage that the council reject it and insist that the developer makes it a proper 2-lane carriageway with proper access for cycles as well as pedestrians, and obviously vehicles of all sizes. Just, to try to discourage transport and commercial transport in that area is silly, because the number of houses that are going to go up around that patch, you need to have proper access. At the very least, from the construction point of view, there's a number of sites going to happen up and around that area. So to narrow it down to a single lane is in our opinion, a very, very silly thing to do. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Councillor Langan. If you could just wait just a moment, I'll just check to see if any of the members have got any questions for you. Are there any, David?
No, Chairman.
Right, thank you, Councillor Langan, for attending the meeting this morning. Thank you very much. The next speaker is Councillor Malcolm Bennett from Buddock Parish Council. I don't know if you can hear me, Councillor Bennett.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Good morning and welcome to this morning's meeting. The format will be as usual, that you've got 3 minutes to speak and your time will start when you start speaking, and we'll give you a prompt when there's 30 seconds to go. So over to you, Councillor.
Thank you, Chairman, and good morning all. Buddock Parish Council has, from the very outset, raised serious concerns about Highways proposals in this area. Highways' current proposal is better than previous designs, but we can't help but feel that Highways have, if they had consulted and acknowledged earlier with us and with Buddock Parish Council in the early planning stages anyway, some of this could have been avoided. One serious concern we have and remains is the Persimmons exit onto Hillhead Road, which is very close to the Barrett's exit. This Buddock Parish Council were led to believe was to be an emergency access point only, and to allow this to be used as an exit without restriction onto Hillhead Road would only encourage it to become a rat run, and it would also allow even more traffic onto what is going to become a very busy road. So we would like some reassurance on that if possible. One further point is that during our early discussions with representatives of Barrett's, our neighbourhood plan was in the early stages of development. One of our requests was the inclusion of air or ground source heating, but we were informed that gas boilers were to be installed. In view of the government intention to ban gas boilers from all new builds from 2025, and the start date for construction and occupation is still some time off, would it not be more sensible to abandon gas in favour of air source heating? Our neighbourhood development plan now carries significant weight, and this is an important element in that plan. So we would like Barrett's to reconsider their plans on this one, please. I've nothing more to add, Chairman. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bennett. If you could just wait, I'll just check to see if any of the members have got a question for you. David, are there any questions, Councillor Barrett?
No, Chairman. No questions.
Yeah. Right. Thank you very much, Councillor Bennett. Thank you very much for attending the meeting this morning. And so we go on to the next speaker, which is in the applicant or agent or supporter slot, and that's Mr. David Matthews. I think Councillor Sawnby, right, you had your camera on. Mr. Matthews, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, good morning and welcome to this morning's meeting. I'll repeat it. You'll have 3 minutes when you start speaking, and we'll give you a prompt when it's 30 seconds to go. So when you're ready.
Councillors, members of the committee, Mr. Chairman, thank you. My name is David Matthews, Land Director at Barrett Homes. This is the third time this scheme has been presented to you, and I sincerely hope the last. At each presentation, the application has been presented with no technical objection, and importantly with officers' recommendation to approve. This is still the case. At each deferred application, we and your officers have been tasked with answering further questions and managing varying opinions. And each time these questions have been asked, we have answered them with no change to the recommendation. Following the last deferral, we were convinced to withhold further applications and engage with officers. We agreed to this. I would like to go on record and express my thanks and proactivity of council officers and the ward member. And I must give special mention to Ben Kernow, Matt Stevenson and Mark Ball, not to mention the ward member. I'm therefore pleased that the enclosed changes as presented by Mark Ball to the off-site highways design in section 106 timings and contributions offer notable benefit and do not offer a highway safety implication or inconvenience. This compromise position promoted by the council or ward member, ergo is therefore acceptable, is one that we can all live with and is a product of all parties working together to find a solution. The commitments and negotiations made by us as applicant, I hope, are recognised. The position reached on highways improvements and 106 is, I hope, viewed positively and has been reviewed by our technical experts in Barrett, including our member of the Queen's Council. They all share this compromise position as further technical complicity, policy weight and benefit to the council and the scheme as a whole. This, though, is the final roll of the dice. We have acted in good faith with engagement to the presentations made and indeed the application as a whole. We have been nothing but accommodating to the inputs, opinions and technical policy required that have been applied, and each time we have come back with a recommendation to approve. I therefore reaffirm our commitment to the solution proposed and again confirm the scheme has no technical or policy deviance and therefore would request your final approval. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Mr. Matthews. If you could just wait just a moment, I'll just check to see if there are any questions for you. Are there any, David?
Councillor Bastin has his hand raised, Chair.
Yeah. Councillor Bastin.
All right, thank you, Chair. Good morning, Mr. Matthews. In February 2020, Barrett's wrote to the Kergillick Road residents offering to purchase some of their gardens for a footway, which would again allow a slightly different sort of development to occur along that road with that footway. Is that still on the table?
No reason to suggest it's not, but not all the residents wish to engage.
Well, I mean that's what you discovered from that sort of process.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Are there any further questions, David?
No other questions, Chair.
No. Right. Thank you very much, Mr. Matthews, for attending the meeting this morning and answering the question. We now go on to the electoral division member, and the first speaker will be the adjoining divisional member, which is Councillor David Thornby. Good morning, David.
Good morning, everybody.
Yeah, I'm sure you're aware of it. It'll be 3 minutes and you get a prompt when you've got 30 seconds left. So over to you.
Okay, I'll get on with it then. I hope the committee members have received the pictures that I've sent out, the photographs. Councillor Angel and myself had a trip up to Kergillick Road last week, and we had to speak to the two properties which I believe are the problem with the narrowing of the road. I don't know if you can see those pictures now that I've sent you, but we had a talk to them, and they are willing to give way on having some of their property taken back. Okay, they can't go to 2.5 meters, which I believe Barrett's want, but they will go 1.5 meters, which will give plenty of room to have a pavement up the left-hand side, which will continue on. Okay, so I don't. Can you see the pictures there at all? I believe Mark Ball will be able to put some of those pictures up that I've taken. This is quite important.
I'll just share my screen. Just bear with me one moment.
Thank you. Right. There should be one there, the hydrant, looking up the road. There you are, the picture on the left. I'm looking at my big screen on my computer, actually. And yeah, the residents of these two properties are willing to surrender 1.5 meters of their property so the footpath can now continue straight on up through. These are the two properties that are causing the problem, I believe. What can I say else? It's really, you don't have to touch the other side of the road. There's no need to take down trees or anything when the solution is quite simple. Take the hedge back, make an agreement with the residents that obviously they'll have to be compensated for taking the walls back, and rebuild with original stone. And I think the solution is very, very easy. This is going to cause major problems with the narrowing of the road, because it's the main road coming in from Gweek, Morland Smith, and Constantine. So as I've said, I'd just like to point to give you my sort of solution to the problem is that we speak to the residents there. They're agreeable to take 1.5 meters of their properties back, so the pavement can continue straight up through. The only piece of street furniture will have to be moved would be the lamppost. That will have to be set back 1.5 meters also. But I believe that this is the easy solution, so we can keep traffic flows moving without any tailbacks. Thank you.
Right, thank you, David. David, have you got any questions for Councillor Sawnby?
No, Chairman.
Yes, I have.
Hang on.
Question.
No hand.
Oh, sorry, I used the cross in the box. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay, over to you, Dulcie.
Thanks, Councillor Sawnby. Have these conversations not happened with the people in those properties then over all this time?
I believe they initially was, but I believe the contractor who's going to who's paying for the roads wanted 2.5 meters, so they were not going to give 2.5 meters of the front gardens up. Okay.
Okay.
So therefore, they're giving way. And said you can have 1.5 meters, which is enough to put a pavement that's nearly 5 foot, a 5 foot pavement right up through in a dead straight line to the top of Kirkgilliack Road. That's a simple solution to this. So you aren't ripping up hedges on the other side, and it keeps the traffic flows moving. We're not narrowing the road.
Okay, so you would like that discussion. That discussion hasn't happened with the 1.5 meter solution.
No, but they are offering it. They said, yes, we will negotiate having 1.5 meters of our front gardens taken away. There's only 2 properties, only a very short distance before it opens up again.
Right, thank you for that question. Right, David, have you got any further questions?
No, Chairman.
No, all right. Thank you very much, Councillor Sawnby. With that, we go on to the divisional member, which is Councillor John Bastin. Over to you, John.
Right. Thank you, Chair, and good morning. Following what I can only call lengthy discussions with both Laura Potts and Matt Stevenson, as you can see, we have made some progress with traffic flow along Kirkgilliack Road. Coastline Housing have made significant amendments to their access, which will allow the pinch point to be reduced, although not taken away altogether. The pinch point will also now have a formal priority status sign. In other words, the traffic coming from what I'll call the roundabout at Union Corner would have priority over the traffic coming the other way. I'm not going to claim it's perfect, but it's far better than what we've seen so far. And as the added bonus that Barrett's have agreed a legal condition that restricts occupation of their development until the new traffic stroke access system has been built out. So this again was something we were asking for, a sequential approach to the development. Councillor Sawnby has suggested the removal of gardens from the nearby bungalows, and I did ask Mr. Matthews a couple of minutes ago whether this was still on the table, and I'm not too sure whether it is or not really from his response. It's not a new idea. I put this idea forward at the beginning of the process, but there seems to be little appetite to move this forward from the developer, highways or residents, and Councillor Sawnby again has given a reason for that in as much as they wanted too much land. It would be the simplest option, I must agree. But perhaps we can sort of build in a condition, although I'm sure Mr. Broomhead will say no, we can't, but perhaps there's some sort of way of looking at that again as part of agreeing this application. Because it is fairly important, I must say, when you look at all the other issues, that this application doesn't drag on and on and on. It must be sorted out fairly soon. Just going slightly sideways, I would like to see a condition that insists that any new Cornish hedges, of which we've heard quite a lot this morning, are rebuilt with local stone and not stone from St Izzy or Callywith, so that that local character that Mark mentioned will be maintained. So bottom line, We have made some improvements. Things have changed in favour of the committee, but over to you really to make the final decision. Thanks very much, Chair.
Thank you, John. David, are there any questions? Yeah.
Councillor Nicholas.
Yeah. Over to you, Sue. I don't think you got your microphone on, Sue.
Sorry. Sorry about
I think it was a good move.
Yeah, right. I'm just trying to get my head round. So these residents have offered 1.5 metres of their property in order for a footpath to go through, which would then alleviate the issue of narrowing that piece of road. Do you know if that has gone anywhere in terms of negotiation with the developers?
Well, as I said, so initially in February 2020, Barrett's did write to those people and sort of opened a gateway, if you like, to discuss that. I think what was asked at the time wasn't acceptable to the residents. Following on from that, Councillor Jewell and Councillor Sornby have had discussions with the residents, and I think there's a sort of compromise situation. Whether or not Barrett's are prepared to go back now and renegotiate is over to them, really.
Right, okay, but that would alleviate all the issues that we're in front of us at the minute, rather than narrowing.
It would indeed. Yeah.
Lovely, thank you.
Thank
Councillor Tudor, Chair.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, Dulcie.
Yeah, sorry to come back to you, Councillor Batten, on this same issue, but it seems to be the crux, doesn't it? That there seems that there isn't a possible alternative here that solves all the problems. And would you? So you don't feel that that's been explored properly yet? Maybe a pause to explore that.
Well, yeah, I mean, Dulcie, I think you're probably right. If it were, the trouble is, how do you build that into an application which currently doesn't mention it, if you see what I mean? Yeah. You'd have to take advice from, say, Ben or Mark Broomhead or somebody, how we could actually facilitate that. But you're right. Yeah. I mean, there is, and it would mean that Coastline wouldn't have to take down their heads either.
Yeah, thank you. Right.
Yeah. But before we go on, actually, Matt is the lead officer on this one. I'd like to bring in Matt, and I'm wondering whether Matt would like a short adjournment or...
Ben Kerner's got his hand up, Chair.
Yeah.
No, that's fine. I think we can advise on the potential for conditioning an alternative scheme now without an adjournment, if that's the advice you'd like me to give.
Yeah, I would, Matt, please, and then I'll come back to Ben.
Yeah, sure. I mean, firstly, a scheme which utilises some of that garden space isn't before you. That's not part of this planning application. So then we move to the second option. Can you put a planning condition that such a scheme comes forward as part of this scheme? And the simple answer is no, you can't. It's third-party land, so you can't put a condition onto that extent. In terms of putting it into a Section 106 agreement, again, you'd have to have the agreement of the developer, and at this moment in time, we just don't have that. It's not something they're pursuing. So the scheme before you is with the highway works as shown by Mark Ball, and I've really got to emphasise it. The scheme says proposed highway works. That is incorrect. That's the approved highway works. That's already been approved. Coastline can go and do those works and narrow the road anyway. So that's been approved. What's different before you today is Barrett's are saying that they won't occupy any of their housing until the approved coastline scheme is put in place. That's what's different from the previous two times it's come before you. We can't use this planning application to go and revisit a planning application that's already been approved in 2018 for a different developer. And I think that's the important thing to bear in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Ben, would you like to come in?
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. I think, Mr. Stevenson's explained it really well. That's where I was coming, Chairman, to say we need to be very careful, don't we, of trying to, impose conditions and trying to consider something that isn't on the table. I think as well, we have, we need to remember, and I know, Councillor Tudor, you won't have been involved with the previous, meetings, but this is the third time now. We can be very, very clear that there will be an appeal. The applicant has worked with us they could quite easily have put in an application, an appeal for non-determination. They've worked with us. I think, we've got a reasonable solution on the table, haven't we, as Matt's told us, and we've got this phasing now, and that really is what we need to look at. We can't go outside the box today, and we need to be very, very careful that, if we go down the refusal, we most certainly will be having to defend a very tricky appeal, a very costly appeal as well. Thank you.
Yeah, but Ben, could I just ask you a question? Is there any way we could put a narrative in that using the word goodwill?
Yeah, the trouble with goodwill is there's no obligation, is there? It's not enforceable. We don't actually know that it's going to happen, so it wouldn't be reasonable. It's not what's on the table. I'd ask. I fear we're going down that route. I'd ask members to consider what's actually been achieved since the last meeting, and in my view, officers did go back and do what they were asked to do. And I would encourage members to look at that. As Councillor Baston said, there's been some progress, so we need to try and look at that. There is still an approval on the on the cards. It's recommended for approval. That hasn't changed. So that's what we need to think about. Hopefully, we can go down that route.
Yeah, right. Thank you. We seem to have slipped into questions of officers, so if any members have got any questions of any of the officers, this is the time for it. Have you got any questions, David?
No questions, Chair.
No. Are there any further comments from any of the officers before we go into committee? No. Right, so it's we now go into committee, and hopefully we'll come up with a recommendation. Now I'll open it up for debate. Right, I can see Mark Kaczmarek. Mark, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. And I've got to thank the officers and the local members for working hard on this. It's been to the committee a number of times now. I think we've got to the point now where we have to approve it. If Councillor Thornby's hard work on trying to get those hedges, the residents having their hedges removed a little bit, is on the card, that would have made it a lot easier. But I think the developers will listen to this, and if there's an easy option for them, they might actually go for that. But what we got on the table at the moment is what we asked the officers to do, and I can see no reason why we should not refuse this application. So I'll move approval as set out, Chairman.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that?
Councillor Coach.
Over to you, Graham.
Yes, I second that. Mark said almost exactly what I would have wanted to say. And it's quite right. If there's a subsequent amendment to the plans to something which is more suitable, all well and good. But in the meantime, I second the motion to approve this as it stands.
Right, thank you. Yeah. Have you got any further speakers?
Councillor Tudor, Chair.
Yeah. Over to you, Dulcie.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I understand that it's been explained that the officers have told us that we are unable to take into consideration or make any recommendations about the residents along the road and the 1.5 metre thing, which is a shame. And I understand that, as Councillor Kaczmarek said, that we have very choice but to approve this. But I just would like to acknowledge the fact that it seems that the local members have actually done a lot of work here and negotiating with people, and maybe work that should have been done earlier in the day, the officers or the developers, and I would just like that on the minutes, really.
Right, thank you. David, have you got any further?
Councillor Simmons,
Yeah, Councillor Simmons. Over to you, John.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. It is a shame, just what Dulcie had just mentioned. In the last meeting, we was promised that all neighbouring members would be called in to discuss this because it was such a big issue in the last meeting. But I'm afraid I wasn't invited along to this meeting, and I'm sure if we was all invited, we could have altered this. I think with the with all the sites that is there, with this one and Eve Park, Coastline, and the one that could be in future, this will make, in my division, the Hillhead and Eastwood Road a lot more busier, and the narrowing in Kilkillock Road, it will form a sort of bottleneck, and it really is a shame that we cannot go back and look and take these two hedges away. It will just be a lot easier for everybody, and just stop that little. I know I've got to give it to the planning officers and highways officers. They have done a lot more work, and it is a lot better. But in my opinion, it's not perfect. But thank you very much.
Right, thank you for that. David, you got any other speakers?
Mike Thomas, Chair.
Yeah, over to you, Mike.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I am struggling with this because I cannot support removal of the vast amount of hedgerow that's been requested here. I follow quite clearly what Councillors Kaczmarek and Councillor Code are saying. I would like some indication of whether the developer would be willing to pursue the work that Councillor Thornby and Councillor Jewell have done, and I really think that their conversations with the landowners on the other side of the road are very significant, and I feel that I'm being asked to trust something, that something will happen in the background and the developer will come forward with an amendment. If that's the case, then I may well be prepared to support it. But at the moment, removing all that hedgerow for something that is totally unnecessary. Anybody who looks at that road, and I have used that road quite frequently, even though I live in Helston, that the most obvious solution is to extend the pavement. And I'm very grateful that Councillor Thornby and Councillor Jewell have made that sort of involvement with Councillor Bastin. But I would urge some sort of information as whether the developer is willing to pursue that.
Yeah, unfortunately, we missed the opportunity to speak to the developer. Councillor Simmons, can you turn off your camera, please? Yeah, it's still on. Right, that's it. Thank you. David.
Yeah, I've got Councillor Nicholas and Ben Kerner.
Yeah, right. Hopefully Ben can answer Mike's question in a moment, but I'll go with the Sue first.
I was going to say, or do you want to go to Ben first?
Well, if you'd like to say what you say, because it might be relevant, that Ben would have something to answer then.
Yeah, so I appreciate what Ben and everyone has said, and I appreciate all the work that the officers have done and the developers have put in. But I too have, I don't understand why this removal of the hedge of 2 residents, as opposed to taking down a whole load of hedgerow and trees and whatever, when we're supposed to be, as the Cornwall Council, protecting the natural environment that we live in. And I just would like, I acknowledge that Ben's saying it was on a previous application, but I would hope that a bit of common sense would prevail here, and that the developers would actually go back and talk to these residents, because that seems to be the most simplest solution to the problem. And I also don't understand why there hasn't been, with all these different developers putting in applications, why there hasn't been a comprehensive look at the whole area and join it all up. So, yeah, I have reservations about them taking down hedgerows when they don't need to be taken down.
Thank you. We'll go over to Ben Curnow and then I'll go on to Matt after that. So, Ben, if you'd like to come in at this stage.
Thank you, Chairman. I expect Matt will have comments to make. I just wanted to make the point that I think we need to be a little bit careful to make sure that we're being fair to the developer, because we've had this information from Councillor Thornby this morning. We haven't given the developer a chance to comment, but what I do know is for my involvement, that the developer was involved originally. The residents wouldn't give 2.5 metres. I have no doubt as well that there would have been financial considerations, and we don't know what those would be now. And I suspect that, because the 2.5 wouldn't be given, there was an inference that the 1.5 wasn't acceptable. But I think, we've got to be very careful, haven't we? We've spoken about the risk of an appeal. We haven't given the developer a chance to comment. So that's all I'd say. I think we need to be fair, when we comment on that. And we know that early on there were negotiations, so it isn't just something that that Councillor Sornby has done. It did happen earlier on.
Right, thank you. Matt, did you want to come in at this stage?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ben, for that as well. I think it's just worth re-emphasising again that hedgerow can come out already under the approved coastline scheme, and what we've done with Councillor Baston's help and coastline's engagement as well is secure more new hedgerow going back in place. So that's one thing that's already been approved. I'm sure the Barretts, as the other developer, the one we're looking at today, would engage with best will with those neighbouring properties. So, and obviously we wouldn't stand in their way of going forward with an improved scheme on the one that's already been approved under the coastline scheme. And if members think that's a real priority, then I think there is a chance to also look at the highways contribution, which would come from the Barrett scheme, which is over £200,000. And if this is a real priority, some of that money could potentially be used as part of the compensation to those neighbouring properties and achieve potentially a road work scheme that doesn't narrow the road, even for those 16 metres, which is now before you. So that is a possible solution. As I said before, and Ben's advice, I don't think we can build that into the consent in terms of a condition or the 106. However, we could utilise some of that highways contribution towards some of that compensation for those neighbouring properties if those further discussions prove successful. So I hope that helps.
Right, David, have you got any further questions?
Yeah, Councillor Tudor.
Yeah, Dulcie.
I just wondered if Councillor Kuzmarek could maybe be how he would feel about because he's proposed approval as set out. I'd noted here about local stone being used on the Cornish walls. I wondered if he would maybe want to put that condition in.
Yeah, I'll go back to Matt first. Would that be a reasonable condition?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was more local than just Cornish stone, though, wasn't it? I think it was very local. So we can amend that condition to seek an idea of where that stone's coming from and agree that.
Yeah. Yeah, well, Mark and Graham, are you happy with that on your recommendation?
Yeah, Chairman, that's essential. There's no way that I'd allow St Izzy's slate to be put in the granite country hedge that they got down at Falmouth there, or Budok. So now I think that's essential that we do that. And they can use the stone that they take out the hedge anyway. So yeah, reuse it. It's even better.
Yeah. Okay then. You're happy with that, Graham?
Yeah, I agree. I was just about to say, surely anyone with half a brain would use the stone from the existing edge of demolishing to build a new one right behind it. Would make sense.
Right, thank you. David, have you got any further speakers?
No, Chair.
No. So with that, we'll put it to the vote. What you'd be voting for would be for approval with the added condition about the local use of the local stone, and that would be everything else with the conditions that are printed in the agenda. So I'll go over to Angela. We'll do it by roll call. So if you'd like to take over, Angela.
Thanks, Chairman. Councillor Robinson.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Code.
4.
Hawkins. 4. Councillor Eakin-Smith.
4.
Councillor Harding.
4.
Councillor Hurd.
4.
Councillor Kaczmarek.
4.
Councillor Martin.
4.
Councillor Nicholas.
4.
Councillor Pascoe.
4.
Simmons.
4.
Councillor John Thomas.
4.
Mike Thomas.
4.
Councillor Tudor.
4.
Confirm that has been carried unanimously, Chairman.
Can I say I've not been called?
Sorry, who was that?
Sorry, John Simmons.
Yeah, I did call you and you did say 4.
I've sorry, I didn't hear, and I'm against.
Oh, I definitely have got an X against that one. Okay, I'll change that to against. So I'll just count up the votes. That's been carried, Chairman. 13 votes in favour, 1 against and no abstentions.
Yep, right. Thank you very much. I think we'll all be delighted we've got a result at last on that one. And I'd just like to add my thanks to all the officers and the councillors that have obviously worked very hard on this development. I think not everybody's got exactly what they want, but certainly the work and the time that's been put into it has shown some improvements. So with that, we'll go on to item 4.2, which that's Mr. H. Parkinson, land adjoining at Carnkey, Wendron, Helston, Carnkey, sorry, I'll get it right in the end. And on that one, I think Peter Gregory, you're taking that one? Can you hear me, Peter?
Chairman, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Are you sharing your screen with us, Peter?
I am, I'll do that now.
Just like to try it a moment.
Is that okay?
Yeah, we can see that. So when you're ready, Peter, over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. This is an outline application with all matters reserved for an affordable housing-led development of up to 4 dwellings on land adjacent to Rotino, Carnkey, Wendron. The key issues in this application for consideration are the principle of development, the provision of affordable housing, the impact on the character of the area, residential amenity and access and highway safety. As you can see, the application site is shown here on the location plan. It's on the southern edge of the village of Carnkey, Wendron. This is the main highway here running through the village. The site, agricultural land, later pasture on the southern side of the highway in a central location there. Moving into the site plan, you can see the site here edged in red, access to the highway in that northeast corner there. You can see a public right-of-way traverses part of the eastern boundary there, and just in the wider surround you have the listed Methodist church further to the west there. This is an aerial plan of the site. As you can see, it's just later pasture at the minute, part of a larger field which stretches to the south there. But the development, the limits of the development will be to this point here on this southern boundary. Turning to the existing site plan, as you can see, more context there. Neighbouring properties here on 2 sides, the access through here, and adjoining land to the west and south is agricultural. And just to stress, it is an outline application with all matters reserved, so this is just an indicative proposed site plan at the moment. As you can see, the development here is how some 4 units could potentially fit on the site. And you can see the sole means of access to the site here from the highway with a driveway through here. And these are just some indicative floor plans that's been supplied by the applicant's architect. And again, these are what would be market housing if any was proposed on the site. Again, just indicative floor plans of how the site may be developed. So turning to the site photographs, here you have the site entrance from the highway, the application site in this area through here. And this is stood in the site entrance looking southeast, so you can see up the hill this is the highway obviously running through the centre of the village, and this is the site entrance looking southeast up the hill. And this is the site entrance looking northwest, which is down the hill towards Port Kellis. So that's the site entrance there. And it's another view here, the site entrance looking southeast up the hill. You can see this area here. It's where the entrance to the development. And this is still in the highway looking south. This is the area of land in here, which would be developed if permission was granted. Again, another view looking southeast from the highway development site through here. You can see the context of existing development already on the road frontage here and the neighbouring properties there to the east of the site. And now we're stood on site looking north, and these are the neighbouring properties which front the highway, and we're stood here on the development site. That's another view looking northwest, again the neighbouring properties and properties here on the road frontage. And this is set back further to the south within the site. This is a view of the western site boundary, which is open land adjoining this side. You can see there the listed Methodist chapel or church there in the distance, and this again is road frontage development here on the south side of the highway. And this is stood on the site looking south. This is the field that would be subdivided to accommodate this rural exception site. So that's further views into the countryside on that side. And again, the view of the eastern boundary as it is at present, neighbouring properties here to the east. Again, a view of the neighbouring properties to the east of the site here. And moving around again, looking northeast, this is the existing site entrance into the field and the access through here to the highway, which we've seen in the previous photos. So turning to the balance of considerations, the proposal is deemed to be acceptable in principle as a suitable affordable housing led scheme to meet an identified local housing need. As it is submitted and outlined with all matters reserved, this is subject to a further review of viability at the detailed reserved matters stage, where the details of the number, mix and tenure of housing units on the site would be finalised. The full impact of the proposal on the character of the area and on the living conditions of existing and future residents will be fully assessed at the reserved matters stage when a detailed scheme is submitted. And it is noted the Highways Officer raises no objection to the use of the sole and existing means of access to the site from the adjoining highway. The proposal is deemed to be acceptable from a biodiversity perspective, and the recommendations of the submitted ecology survey will be secured by a suitable planning condition as set out in the report. And it is acknowledged that the development of the site will inflict a degree of environmental harm being an undeveloped site on the character of the area. However, this is outweighed in the planning balance by the considerable social benefits of providing affordable housing to meet an identified local need on a site that does meet the policy requirements of a rural exception site under Policy 9 in the local plan. So the recommendation is to approve with conditions and subject to completion of a Section 106 planning obligation to secure the affordable housing. Thank you, Chairman.
Right, thank you, Peter. There's nobody for the objectors spot on public speakers, so we go straight to the parish town council representatives, and the next speaker will be Councillor Sheila Moyle, representing Wendron Parish Council. Can you hear me, Councillor Moyle?
Chairman, if she could press *6 to unmute her telephone, please.
Did you hear that, Councillor Moyle? Press *6. Hello, Councillor Moyle, can you hear me?
Hello.
Yeah. Good morning. Is that Councillor Moyle?
Yes.
Yes. Good morning, and welcome to this morning's meeting. It'll be the usual format. It will be 3 minutes for your speaking time, and we'll give you a prompt when it's 30 seconds to go. So when you're ready.
Right. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Having already been refused permission for a similar development, albeit for open market housing on the same site, Wendron Parish Council views this particular application as nothing less than a cynical attempt by the applicant to use current planning rules to circumvent that original decision. This site, and particularly the view through onto the open countryside, is one which is highly valued by local residents. 13 detailed letters of objection concerning this particular application have been received by the planning authority. 44 were received concerning the earlier application. Members of the committee will be aware that this is an unusually large amount of response from such a small community. Development of this site, which in planning terms lies in an unsustainable position, as there is no local shop or post office and a sparse bus service. Therefore, future occupants will require to use privately owned motor vehicles, and that will cause considerable environmental harm and change forever the open aspect of the rural village at this point. The loss of this open view from within the village is not outweighed by the benefit of accruing from 2 affordable dwellings. Wendron Parish Council urges members to refuse permission for this development. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Councillor Moore. If you can just wait, just in case we've got some questions for you. David, are there any questions?
Yes, Councillor Tudor.
Councillor Tudor.
It's me again. I would just like to ask the councillor, sorry, do you think there is enough affordable housing provision in the area?
Yes, at the moment there is. We've, well, a couple of years ago, had a site built at Rame, and all rental and shared equity. And there is also big development near Helston, which is within our parish boundary, where there are, as is required with a big development, quite a few more local needs housing going to be built.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, are there any further questions, David?
No, sorry, no, Chair, no.
No, right, thank you. Thank you very much, Councillor Moore, for attending the meeting this morning and answering the question. Thank you. The next speaker would be the applicant, and that's Mr. Henry Parkinson. I don't know if you can hear me, Mr. Parkinson.
Good morning, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. It'll be the usual format. We'll give you 3 minutes to speak. There'll be a prompt at 30 seconds. And once you finish speaking, if you just wait a little bit, just in case there are any questions for you. So when you're ready, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and councillors. You've already heard from Mr. Gregory, the planning officer, who has stated his positive recommendation, but we wanted to fill in a few areas from our side of things. We wanted to submit a planning application for a development that was modest in size, roughly about a 2.5% increase in building numbers within Carnkai, that reflected the rural feeling of the village, and we were creating this through a farmyard style design in keeping with the farm complex that sits opposite the entrance driveway. We wanted something that would work for both us, as well as something that would attract some young families in the village at an affordable price. We spent 6 very happy years starting a family in Carnkai and felt that some family 4-bed plots would enable some new families to afford something in a great village environment in good connection distance to both Falmouth, Helston and the North Coast. We feel the short and long-term socio-economic benefits for this development are strong, through both the building phase as well as beyond, through the support of local businesses such as the local post office, pub at Porkellis, cricket club, as well as obvious support to the local primary school at Howland. We understand that this application brings with it opposition, but our intent was never to cause upset within the local community, but rather allow our village to grow in a small manner. This current scheme is not what we set out. As you've heard, we already originally wanted to create 2 to 3 open market housing, as detailed in the original application and pre-app between the applications, but we have followed planning officer recommendations throughout and changed our plans accordingly. As such, we have landed with an affordable lead housing scheme for up to 4 plots. The reason for this slight increase in number was due to the detailed viability study that we had commissioned, which highlighted that anything less would be unviable. It is clear from the affordable housing team that there is an identified need for additional affordable housing within the parish of Wendron, even when one considers the HX1 scheme. The social benefits of 2 affordable houses ring-fenced for 2 Wendron families is clear. We have not finalised designs, as is clear from this outline application, and as such, we feel that decisions going forward, including appropriate landscaping, would avoid causing overriding harm to the character of the area. With regards to access, we see no issue here, as this was never an issue for us when we lived at the address, with no incident encountered over 6 years using the driveway multiple times daily. Furthermore, the entrance will be widened, only further bettering sightlines. This is also clearly supported by the highways officer. We were, however, a little confused by the parish council's objection to this recent application, given their support during the first outline application for what was a very similar design and footprint to what we are proposing today. With regards to affordable housing land take, we did design the scheme to be over 50% land take for the affordable housing, something which my architect assures me is the case on the drawings presented. As for housing type and size, this is something that clearly needs to be discussed in order to ensure that the homes are indistinguishable from the open market houses. Overall, and in conclusion, we feel that even though this modest development has had opposition, We hope that, if approved, this application will bring some needed affordable housing, short and long-term socio-economic benefits for the local community. It's our desire to work closely with the council to ensure that this results in a small development in keeping with the local feel of Carnkite and avoid causing overriding harm to the character of the area. Given the recommendation from the planning team...
That's time, I'm afraid, Mr.
Okay, I would just ask for your support in this application. Thanks.
Yeah, if you just wait, might be some questions for you. I think there is one. Have you got hands up, David? Oh, David.
Sorry, I keep muting myself and forgetting to come back. Councillor Nicholas.
Yeah, over to you, Sue.
Thank you, and thank you for your information. Just looking at the plans, I'm a bit confused because it's saying up to 4 dwellings, but they look like 3 blocks of semi-detached, which come to 6 to my mind. And you're saying it's for young families. Have you any idea about transport issues?
So the plans actually show 2 detached properties, which were not semi-detached, and then the top one is a semi-detached. So it's 4 properties in total.
Right. Okay.
And with regards to the transport links, the bus service in Carnkite is, as we all know, not fantastic. There is a bus service, but everyone who lives there currently, generally makes a commute by car. But there is a bus service, and it does still run.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further questions, David?
No, Chairman.
Yeah, Sue, if you could just switch your camera off. Right, thank you. Right, with that, we go on to electoral division member, and that's Councillor Loveday Jenkin. Are you there, Loveday?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. Usual format, it'll be 5 minutes, and at that stage, we'd be asking you to wind up. So when you're ready, over to you.
Yeah, well, I'd first of all like to refer members to my comments on page 87. This is a complicated issue because the site was previously considered to be not suitable for development. My concern in approving this application would be that it's actually saying something that was considered not suitable for development is considered suitable for development because of the affordable housing that it brings. However, I'm not convinced that the affordable housing that is being proposed is what's needed for the area. When the study was done to look at the development of the affordable housing at Rain Cross, it was very clear that the demand was for rented properties, not for buying at discount properties. My concern is because this is an outline application, all it's doing is setting the principle of development, and that should not be outweighed by possible viable affordable housing in the full planning application, because we don't have the full planning application before us. Therefore, we can't say whether it's viable for affordable led development. The affordable housing team say that in their comments. They say that they would need a lot more detail before they could actually say that it could be an affordable housing scheme. They're saying that the footprint for the affordable is not enough to show 50% affordable on the site. They're saying that they're not convinced that the land take is suitable for 50% on the site. And Wendron Parish Council's clear expressed wish is that all exception sites within the rural areas should be 100% affordable, or getting near to that 50% affordable is not really suitable to outweigh all the impacts of having development on this site. This site is part of the Foul Sack. It is has got environmental value as it stands. It is a wet meadow. There are drainage issues. None of that can be addressed, obviously, through the outline planning application. But my concern is by approving an outline planning application without any details, you're approving a principle of development on a site that should not have the principle of development upon it. The benefit to the affordable stock within Wendron is minimal, and probably isn't the type of affordable stock that is needed for the majority of people who need affordable housing in Wendron. We know that rental and shared equity seems to be the way that most people can get on the housing ladder within the rural areas. So I would ask members to consider all those things. There have been parish council-led affordable housing schemes, both in the past in Penmarth, but also recently at Raimcross, as well as the HX1 development. So Wendron has well and truly had more than its fair share of affordable housing from the 1,000 in the South Kerrier network. It is a relatively unsustainable location as well. And I don't know about you, but access for 1 or 2 cars to a property is a bit different from access for 4 properties and the number of cars going in and out from that site, which has got some visibility issues. So I would ask you to consider this and refuse the application at this stage.
Right, thank you, Loveday. Were there any questions from members for Loveday?
No, I can't see any, Chairman.
Right, thank you. So with that, we'll go into, are there any questions of the officers?
None yet.
None yet. Are there any of the officers
Councillor
want to make any comments?
Councillor Hawkins has popped up.
Yeah, over to you, Helen.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to ask about the point that Councillor Jenkins just made about what proportion of affordable housing is necessary to transform a site that's not for development into one that is. Could someone comment on that, please?
Yeah. Mark, do you want to delegate that one?
Thank you, Chairman. Obviously, affordable housing-led schemes come under different policies. So we look under policy 9, and that sets out all the criteria. We have to weigh the harm against the benefits, and obviously that's different. For open market, we felt that the harm didn't outweigh the benefits, but obviously affordable housing is one of the corporate priorities, and in this particular case, we felt that harm would outweigh the harm is outweighed by the benefits.
Right, thank you. David, you got any further questions?
Yes, Councillor Sue Nicholas.
Yeah, over to you, Sue.
Thank you. Yeah, just on that point, obviously that's a greenfield site, and therefore I would have expected, something not just kind of like an outline, because an outline just does demonstrate permitted development, doesn't it? It doesn't actually give us anything in terms of what is being proposed and built for the relative local families.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Nicholas. Obviously, we can't make anybody put in a full application. It is an outline application, as you said, but obviously it will be subject, if it was granted, to a subsequent reserve matters application, which obviously members as well as the parish council can have their input on the design or siting, etc. I wouldn't put any weight on that indicative layout, because that's not before us, because it is an outline of all matters reserved.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. David, you got any further speakers?
Mark Asmarek, Chairman.
Yeah, Mark.
Yeah, thank you. For affordable housing officer, really, we do, in our report, it mentions the affordable houses being built in Wendron Parish, but a substantial amount of those houses are going to be built right on the border of Helston, and most people would say this is part of Helston where that one's being developed. So this type of affordable housing would target people living in more rural areas, just like, Cornwall, Wendron, and even Raimcross. So is this targeted more at those types of people living in the rural areas?
Yeah, I don't know, who's speaking on affordable today?
Hi, it's Nikki Manor.
Oh, hi, yeah, sorry. Yeah, if you'd like to take that one.
I think our concern is that the HX1 development is for Helston and Wendron in the section 106, so it's priority for those households. The need in the Helston parish is significant. At the moment it's 328 households, so the chances of people from the Wendron parish being considered for that scheme when those properties become available probably isn't as high as it would be if we had a scheme that specifically targeted those people from the Wendron parish, which this one should do. Does that help?
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Right, David, are there any further speakers?
None I can see, Chair.
Yeah. Right. So with that, we'll go into committee and.
Helen's done it again. She's popped up.
Sorry, I'm a bit slow, Chair. I just wanted to pick up with the Affordable Housing Officer, the issue that Councillor Jenkins raised about needing rented rather than paid than reduced price accommodation. Is that an issue here?
Yeah, we don't have any up-to-date information on those households looking for affordable home ownership in the area. So that's something that we've sort of commented in the application in terms of wanting a bit more information around that. There's no reason why we couldn't look at affordable rented accommodation for these the affordable dwellings on this scheme, and we can certainly work with some local registered providers to look at interest for that.
Right, thank you. So I'd already said that we're going into committee, so we'll now go into committee. If any members want to make any comments or move any recommendations, hopefully. Yeah.
Councillor Nicholas, Chair.
Yeah. Right, over to you, Sue.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not convinced that this is going to be suitable for the area and the needs of the people, seeing that they are wanting to look at rented accommodation. It's on a greenfield site. It was turned down before, so I certainly won't be supporting this. Thank you.
Good. Have we got any further speakers?
Not yet, Chair. Mark has merit.
Yeah, Mark.
Yeah. Thank you, Chairman. And I've listened closely to the debate, and I do respect the parish councils and the local members' comments. But having represented and still representing a very rural area, it's very difficult to get affordable housing schemes, especially right in those areas. Not everywhere's got a shop. Not everybody's got a post office on their doorstep, and most people live in rural areas do rely on some type of transport to get around. So this is an affordable led scheme. I know from my own experiences as a councillor that when houses are passed, if you get some there that are going to be for whether it's rented or shared ownership, then once people see stuff like this happening, they'll put their names forward for it. It does benefit rural communities. So I would like to move a recommendation as set out, Chairman.
Right, thank you. Is there a seconder for
that? Councillor Tudor, head up, Chair.
Yeah, Dulcie.
I'll second that. I second that.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine. Are there any further speakers? Any comments?
Councillor Code, Chair.
Sorry.
Councillor Code.
All right. Over to you, Graham.
Yes, I was going to second this, but Dulcie jumped in before I could get there. I understand people's reservations, but I was through Carnkai in the last 10 days twice because I got lost. So I went through one way and came back the other. So I actually looked at the area and quite enjoyed it. This is outlined, and the principles of affordable housing and exception sites and all means that we really ought to consider this. And whether it's not going to be suitable dwellings or not, we can decide at the full planning stage later on. I would be looking for something that really does well match in with existing homes within the area, but I will support this application at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further speakers, David?
No, Chairman.
Right, so I'll put that to the vote. It's been moved by Councillor Kaczmarek and seconded by Councillor Tudor that we approve the application as printed in the agenda. So we'll do it by roll call. Over to you, Angela.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Baston.
For.
Councillor Robinson.
4.
Councillor Code.
4.
Councillor Hawkins.
4.
Councillor Eakin-Smith.
4.
Councillor Harding.
4.
Councillor Hurd.
4.
Councillor Kaczmarek.
4.
Councillor Martin.
Against.
Councillor Nicholas.
Against.
Councillor Pascoe.
Against.
Councillor Simmons.
Against.
Councillor John Thomas.
Against.
And Councillor Mike Thomas.
4.
Councillor Tudor.
4.
Thank you. If you just bear with me while I count that up. Can confirm that has been carried by 10 votes in favour, 5 against and no abstentions.
Right, thank you. If members are happy, if you want a short break, I propose that we'll take a 10-minute break. But if members could be back prompt, because we've got a rather large agenda. So, and I would remind members, the live stream is still on, so if you could switch off your microphones and your cameras, and if you'll be back prompt within 10 minutes. Thank you. Angela, how are we doing for time? And have we got all the members back?
Did you say 10 minutes? Because I think we might have we got another 4 minutes left?
Oh, wait, I'm going with a kneeling time. Sorry about that. It's 2 o'clock saying the same thing here. Yeah, right. But
Mr. Chairman, it might be the same time at Newlyn, but what year are you talking about?
Yeah, I thought we were reconvening at 11:45.
yeah, I'm looking at the mission clock, so that is notoriously incorrect at times.
When we get to just before then, I'll do a quick roll call to make sure everybody's back.
Right. I'll leave it to you.
I'll just start the roll call and see who's here. Councillor Baston.
Here.
Councillor Robinson. Move on a minute. Councillor Code. Hawkins.
Yes.
Councillor Eakins-Smith.
Present.
Heard.
Present.
Councillor Kaczmarek.
I'm here.
Councillor Martin.
Present.
Councillor Nicholas.
Present.
Councillor Pascoe.
Present.
Councillor Simmons.
Yeah.
Councillor John Thomas.
Present.
Councillor Mike Thomas.
I'm present.
Councillor Tudor.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Code. Councillor Robinson.
Yep, I'm here.
Okay. It's Councillor Code that we're waiting for.
Nothing new there. Someone at the door. Sorry, I'm here now.
Okay, everybody's now present, Chairman.
Everybody seems to be present, so we'll carry on. So the next item on the agenda is 4.3. That's Mr. S and Mrs. D. Dyer, land and buildings at Kew Farm, Praise and Beeble. And I think Scott Jenkins, Scott, can you hear me?
Hi, Chair. Yes, can you?
Yeah. Are you sharing your screen with us, Scott?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. If you could just try that a moment. Yes, we can see it. So, start when you're ready, Scott.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Chair. So this is a full planning application submitted for the demolition of the existing building with the erection of a new dwelling, change use land to residential, which includes some landscaping and parking at land and buildings at Kew Farm. So the key issues in regards to this application are going to be the principle of development, the impact upon the character and appearance of the surrounding areas, with other considerations including flood risk, ecology and biodiversity, and impact on public rights of way. So the site location plan showing the strategic location. As you can see, the application site is situated in an open countryside location, approximately 1.3 kilometres to the northwest of the settlement of Praise and Beeble, with the B3303 running in this north to south direction. Okay, just a bit more of a closer up image of the site. As you can see, the site's accessed from a bridleway which runs in the kind of east to west direction, with a public right-of-way shown in the dotted blue running in a sort of northeasterly direction. So this is just a site aerial perspective, again, just showing the countryside location and just the general characteristics of the area. Okay, so just a little bit of background to the site. The existing building, which is outlined in red on this plan, was granted permission under Class Q for its change of use to residential in June 2019. Again, this is the site location plan which forms part of that approval, showing the extent of the red line and obviously the footprint of the existing building. Similar again, this is the approved floor plan and elevations associated with that Class Q permission. And again, this relates to the conversion of the existing building on the site. Okay, so just coming into the current application. So this is the block plan associated with the application. Again, the red line that indicates the extent of the curtilage proposed as part of this application, which is the larger red line. Obviously, the footprint is shown in terms of the building now becoming an L-shaped building and moved slightly to the north outside of the flood zone 3 and 2 designations. And just for reference, this plan does show the Class Q fallback in terms of the extent of the red line and the dashed line here in terms of the footprint of the existing building. So this is the proposed building under consideration. As mentioned, it's an L-shaped building comprising 3 bedrooms. Its design is of an ad hoc appearance. There's no symmetry. There's a mixture of materials, including black vertical cladding, stone walls with black windows and doors. These are some photos of the site. This is the view of the site when approaching from the south from the bridleway. Again, similar kind of position, just panned to the west slightly, showing the existing building. This photo taken showing the view along the southern boundary of the site. Again, this is from the western boundary of the site, looking easterly back towards the access. Again, similar position, just panning slightly to the left. Similar again, just panning a little bit more to the left. That's just showing the extent of the existing building. And this is the land just to the north of the existing building, which is to be incorporated into the curtilage of this current application. So this position is looking from the site in a westerly direction, showing the extent of the land. And again, similar position showing in a sort of southwesterly position, showing the position or the sort of entrance to the designated public right-of-way position. So in terms of the balance of considerations, as mentioned, in 2019, the Council determined prior approval was not required for the conversion of the existing building into a dwelling under Class Q. Cornwall Council guidance under the Class Q states that this can be a material fallback when considering rebuilds, providing that the results are a better scheme in terms of the building design and amenity provision than what the Class Q would have allowed. So the proposed development is not considered to harm the character and appearance of the area, given the fallback position. In regards to this application, there is ecology enhancements proposed. The building has been moved northerly just to minimise impact on the flooding designation. And again, in terms of the public rights of way, these fall outside the red line, so are considered to be unaffected by the proposal. So in light of the above, on balance, it is considered recommended for approval, subject to conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Right, thank you. We have got some speakers. There's none in the objector slot. There's none from the parish or town council. So the first speaker we've got is Mr. S. Dyer, who's the applicant. Can you hear me, Mr. Dyer?
Yes, I can hear you, Chairman.
Yeah. Okay, the normal format is that it'll be 3 minutes and we'll give you a prompt when you've got 30 seconds to go. Your time will start when you start speaking. Over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, everyone. My name is Stephen Dyer and my wife is Debbie Dyer, and we are the applicants. And we wish to respectfully ask that the Planning Committee consider the following points. We have lived in the village of Praise for some 26 years, and the holding was acquired some 15 years ago and has been run as a mixed small farming enterprise alongside my wife's established horticultural enterprise, which revolves around growing flowers and foliage for the floristry market. The horticultural side has grown, replacing some of the agricultural operations. And as there are 2 barns on the holding and the horticultural business only requires 1 building, a decision was made in 2009 to pursue a Class Q application on the subject barn, and this was successfully obtained under reference PA 1901516 in June 2019. Upon approval of the application, and due to the very utilitarian nature of the building and the restrictions of Class Q, the then Cornwall Council case officer recommended that it would be better for all if a new dwelling of stronger architectural merit were applied for in the alternative. This is not something we had thought of before, but once identified, the prospect appeared to us to be better for all. Following this suggestion, a new design has been developed, and we firmly believe that it is more sustainable and will deliver a far better longer-term legacy to the character area if we're allowed to build this high-quality new dwelling as opposed to having to convert the existing structure. We have noted the comments of the parish council and the divisional member, and with respect to both parties, feel strongly that the situation is not fully understood. Class Q exists in this case, and a new dwelling could be created under this with no further consents required. In our opinion, the proposals will only deliver a range of better planning outcomes, including a higher quality design, a more sustainable construction overall rather than additional impacts. For completeness, with regard to the comments from the divisional member, we would also point out that the council have already accepted the building met the Class Q tests, and in fact the horticultural enterprise has never actually operated from this building, and in any event horticulture is agriculture in terms of the Town and Country Planning Act. It is therefore with respect that we ask the committee to set aside views on the principle of new homes in the countryside and simply consider whether, if on balance, it would be better for a home to be created on the extent of consent, or instead under the submission now before the committee. We firmly hope that the committee can follow the officer recommendation for approval, and we can move from our current home in the village, which we are selling, to live on the holding, and to continue to make a contribution to the local area. On this basis, we respectfully request that consent be given. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Mr. Dyer. If you could just wait a moment to see if any of the members have got a question for you. Are there any questions, David?
No, Chairman.
No. Okay, well, thank you very much for attending the meeting this morning, Mr. Dyer. Thank you. And with that, the next slot is the electoral division member, which that's Councillor Loveday Jenkins again. Over to you, Loveday.
Thank you, Chair. This is a difficult application in that it's already been approved for a Class Q conversion of the horticultural building on the site. The applicant says it wasn't used for horticulture, in which case I'm not sure what agricultural use it was used for, but that's not under debate today, obviously. It does impact on a bridleway, in that there's a bridleway is the only access onto the site, and it will be a larger footprint and almost doubling of curtilage for residential development in the countryside. As such, it doesn't appear to meet planning policy for developments in the open countryside, and if Class Q wasn't in existence, it wouldn't have got any sort of permission at that site, I would suggest. The use of the site has developed since 2000, when there was really no buildings on the site, to a small shed in 2005 and doubled in size in 2016. So we're looking at Class Q in relation to a relatively recent large building in the countryside. Far be it for me to argue with the government policies on what is Class Q and what isn't, but I think in previous times this would never have been considered as a residential development. Having said that, the views from the parish are split in terms of whether this is a better development than the previously approved Class Q one, and that's really why I think it's important for this committee to decide what's best, rather than just leaving it to the planning officers, because it does impact on use of the countryside in that area. The footpath in that area was blocked and by structures, polytunnels, etc. from 2000. It is slightly more open now, but it still will be crossing the site. So if this were to be approved, I'd like to see that there was works done to ensure that the route of the footpath is properly designated and marked, because at the moment it isn't. Thank you.
Thank you, Loveday. Were there any questions from any of the members to Loveday, David?
I can't see any, Chairman, no.
Yeah, I did have one, Loveday. Did you say that it was extended in 2016? Because my understanding of the policy, which I would think has been very badly written by the government, my understanding is that it had, perhaps the question to you is, was the whole of the building in agricultural use in 2013, which my understanding is that, that's part of the policy and it should be in agricultural use in March 2013. I know we're going over old ground, but it's just out of interest on that one.
Councillor Jenkin, you're on mute at the moment. It's Angela from Democratic Services.
Yeah, I was going to say that's not a question I can answer, Chair, but presumably the council officers looked at that when they approved the Class Q in 2019. All I can say is that in 2005 the building was significantly smaller, and by 2016, and I mean that's just looking at aerial photographs, I haven't got the on the ground knowledge. Perhaps the applicant would have that knowledge about when the extension to the building was put up, but I'm sure our council officers were diligent in looking at that.
Yeah. Okay. It's irrelevant now because it's got, accepted there is the Class Q. Right. So are there any questions of officers?
Councillor Kaczmarek, Chair.
Over to you, Mark.
Yeah, I don't know if we got anyone here from the country team, but can we have assurances that if we approve this application, that the rights of way will be opened and not blocked as stated on page 111?
Yeah. Mark, can you take that?
Councillor Kaczmarek, on page 117, we've put an informative on, which hopefully makes the applicants fully aware, and obviously the countryside access have their own powers outside the planning system.
Okay, thank you.
Right, were there any other questions, David?
No, Chair.
Yeah. Did any of the officers have any questions? No. Right, we'll take it in the committee. Over to you, members.
Councillor Coe, Chair.
Hello, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Look, we may or may not individually like or agree with the status quo, but it does exist. It has been sort of approved for this premises, and as such, just about everything that is being applied for is in order. And I would struggle to find any reason, any real reason, planning reason, to vote against this. I know it seems strange that so many times we've thought it would be nice to allow some development in some parts of the countryside and been told no, but this is appropriate, this is right, and they've got planning regulations and laws on their side. I propose that we accept this application.
Yeah, so it's been moved for approval as per agenda by Graham.
I'll second that, Chairman. I'll second that, Chairman. Councillor Thomas?
Yeah, Councillor, that sounds like Councillor John Thomas has been seconded. Right, is there any further comments before we go over to the vote?
Could I just make a comment, Chairman?
Yes.
Yeah, I just feel that this application now far exceeds the visual aspect of the original one on Class Q, and it's a much preferable design to me anyway. And I think with the eye remaining, the landy-eyed trees around it, it'd be fairly well screened. So I'm fully supportive of it, Chairman.
Right, thank you. Right, were there any further comments from any of the members?
Can't see any, Chair. No.
No. Right, so I'll put it to the vote. The recommendation is approval as per the agenda. It's been moved and seconded, so I'll go over to Angela for the roll call.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Baston.
4.
Councillor Robinson.
4.
Councillor Code.
4.
Councillor Hawkins. 4. Councillor Eakin-Smith.
4.
Councillor Harding.
Against?
Councillor Hurd.
4.
Councillor Kaczmarek.
4.
Councillor Martin.
4.
Councillor Nicholas.
4.
Councillor Pascoe.
Against.
Councillor Simmons.
Against.
Councillor John Thomas.
4.
Councillor Mike Thomas.
4.
And Councillor Tudor.
4.
Thank you. I'll just count that up a moment. Okay, I can confirm that that motion has been carried by 12 votes in favour, 3 against and no abstentions.
Right, thank you. So with that, we go on to item 4.4, that's PA 20//09303, S. Catron, the Beach Walk Retreat, North Street, Mara Zion. And I think Adam Carline is taking that one. Adam, can you hear me?
Yeah, hi Joe, I'll just get the presentation off a minute.
Yeah, if you just try that, I can see you. Yeah, right. Yeah, we can see your screen. So when you're ready, Adam, if you'd like to carry on.
Yeah, well, I can't see myself a minute, so bear me a second. Can you see the presentation, Chair?
Yes, I see it fine.
Oh, I can't see it myself at the moment. I might just try that again a minute.
You can see it now, or I can. Can anybody else not see it?
Yeah, it's just not appearing for me at the minute. Sharing is paused until I return to the shared window.
Has anybody got any ideas how to help Adam?
Yeah, I mean, I've done this before, Chair, but I can't, for some reason, understand why it won't let me see it in the usual format.
Can you carry on with just sound only? Can you?
It's in. I've got it on slide format. So, Loveday, didn't you suggest something the other week? The other day?
Oh wait, no, I've got it now. Sorry.
That's it.
Right, as you were, it was my fault. Okay, so just to confirm, this is an application for the construction of a 2-storey detached dwelling together with associated works, which includes the erection of a detached annex, with the variation of conditions 2, 5 and 7 in relation to the previous planning permission from 2018, which members may vaguely recall came before them a few years ago. So the key issues are whether the amendments to the original permission would at least preserve the setting of the nearby Grade 2 listed buildings and the character and appearance of the conservation area, and whether the amendments to the original permission would preserve the amenities of the neighbouring dwellings to the southeast. So as you can see, the site's situated towards the western end of Marazion within its urban area. Moving in a bit closer, you can see that the site is in a sensitive historical environment setting within the conservation area, as noted before. The purple buildings all around, particularly to the southeast, are Grade 2 listed buildings, and it's also in the historic settlement of Marazion as well. Moving on to the aerial photograph, this has actually been updated to show the development which has currently been undertaken. So you can see the dwellings towards the southwestern end and the annex at the northeastern end, but you'll see that in more detail in a minute. This is the proposed site plan. So you've got North Street at the southwestern end and the proposed dwelling just set back from the access with its parking and turning area to the front, and the annex building at the far northeastern boundary of the site. These are the proposed annex plans, just for your information. So basically it's set up either as some incidental space or as ancillary space. I would point out to members on the left-hand side, you'll see an area where it says no decking. The photographs in a second will show that decking has been created up to the stone boundary wall, which at the southeastern side, that is proposed to be removed. So bear that in mind. But again, I'll re-emphasize that once we get to the photographs. These are some access and egress plans. Unfortunately, during the building works, part of the boundary wall was demolished despite a planning condition requiring that all walls are to be retained. The wall has been rebuilt, which you'll see in a minute, and a new 3.6 metre wide access has been proposed. And this plan just shows how it would work in terms of parking and turning. This is a proposed site section. So one of the key changes from before is a platform has been constructed beneath the annex at the rear of the site. That's at the left-hand side. I'm not sure if you can see my cursor hovering over it, but that's one of the big changes that's before you for consideration and the impact that's had on the amenities of the residents. The dwelling itself, there's been some issues with that. One of those is the chimney flue that's been constructed. You can see that on this site section plan as well. These are proposed dwelling and annex elevations. So the bottom four are the dwelling and the top one is the annex. So a comparison, on the left-hand side here, you'll see what was approved by members under the PA18 reference. So a very, very similar layout and design to everything. On the right-hand side is the main changes. A particular note, again, is the platform beneath the annex. You can see here on the right-hand plan, again, that it's proposed to be pulled back from the boundary wall. That's, the main change you can see on those plans. Again, in comparison of sections, so the top one is a site section that was submitted with the original application, showing that there was no need for a retaining structure back then. It was anticipated that the dwelling would follow the natural ground level and be constructed adjacent to the wall. We understand it was since apparent that once the building works commenced, that wasn't possible, and the applicant decided to erect the retaining structure, perhaps not realising that it required planning permission in its own right, and perhaps not also appreciating the impact it would have on the residents. So as a comparison, at the top is what's been approved, the bottom is what's before you here. Again, approved and proposed elevations. As you'll see from the dwelling itself, very minor changes are proposed under this current application. The main change really is the chimney flue that's been constructed. A slight change to the elevational treatments on the northwest elevation. So onto the photographs. The top left is the dwelling as constructed, and you can see in the corner the boundary wall. Top right is a close-up of the dwelling. At the moment, the windows that have been constructed there are windows that we are seeking amendments to. They've not had the approval of the local planning authority, and we are seeking higher quality alternatives under this application. Bottom left is a close-up of the wall that's been reconstructed. So we're disappointed that the wall was demolished in contravention of the permission, but we are otherwise happy with the manner in which it's been rebuilt. Bottom right is a view up the side of the dwelling towards the annex at the rear. You can see that in timber form with the neighbouring dwelling beyond above it. So some photographs of the annex and the raised platform. Top right is a view of the annex. I'll draw your attention to bottom right in particular. This section of decking here is proposed to be taken down and the platform removed, and then a balustrade pulled tight to the side elevation of the annex building. And we are seeking a condition on the permission about landscaping of the removed area of decking to ensure that it's suitable and can't be used by residents in the future, which could obviously further harm the impact of the neighbours. And lastly, the top two photographs are ones I took from a neighbouring property. So you can see from their perspective, they're set considerably down and the annex does protrude above their property. And the bottom two are ones that have been kindly sent to me by a neighbour, just showing the annex during the various stages of its construction. So, in terms of the balance, the local concerns are fully understood, particularly in view of the site's sensitive historic environment setting. However, following extensive negotiations between the local planning authority, the applicant's professional advisors, we consider that the proposed scheme of amendments are acceptable on balance, including in respect of overlooking and overbearing to the southeast. One final update, revised plans have been requested to address some small technical matters which do not have a bearing on the recommendation before you today. So the recommendation is slightly different. It's now for conditional approval, subject to the submission of slightly amended plans. I'd also draw your attention to the addendum as well. We've had a couple of further representations submitted. One of those I've provided a detailed response to. The other representation covers points that are already made either in the addendum or in the report. And that's the same applies to the Town Council's further comments as well. That's the end of the presentation. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you, Adam. We've got no objectors in the speaking slot. So the first speaker would be from Marizine Town Council, and that's Councillor Derek Leahy. Can you hear me, Councillor Leahy?
Okay.
Hello, is that Councillor Leahy?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Good morning and welcome to the meeting. Be the normal format that you'll have 3 minutes to speak. We'll prompt you when it's 30 seconds to go, and your time will start when you start speaking. So over to you, Councillor Leahy.
Thank you. Good morning, councillors. There have been numerous breaches of this planning conditions that were attached to this property. For example, the windows that have been unlawfully installed do not reflect those that were shown on the plans accompanying the original permission. The chimney has been unlawfully installed. The dimensions of the outbuilding have changed. The gate opening significantly larger than the permitted opening. The unauthorised demolition of part of the boundary wall is highly unfortunate. These are not my words, these are the words of the planning officer who's dealing with this application when he responded to one of the many complaints made in relation to this development. Despite these comments and the complaints to him, the planning enforcement, little action seems to have been taken to address these unlawful works. North Street is in a conservation area of the town and is of great historic interest. Cornwall Council obviously agreed with this when imposing the planning conditions to preserve the character and appearance of the Marizine Conservation Area and the setting of the neighbouring Grade 2 listed buildings. The summary of the Marizine Conservation Area appraisal states, stone boundary walls are strong features within the town and help give Marizine its unique character. This property has done nothing to preserve the character and appearance of the area and this historic part of the town. Compliance with the conditions would have imposed would have at least helped to have done this. None of the current conditions have any great impact on the use of the dwelling, but have a huge detrimental effect on the street. The unlawfully installed windows and chimney, the larger than permitted opening in the wall, the issue with overlooking in the outbuilding, these issues could be rectified at little cost in order to comply with the law and current planning conditions, especially when compared to the nearly £800,000 current asking price of the property, it being on the market despite the original application stating the applicant wanted to build a dwelling on her own land for her current and future needs. There seems to be a continued disregard of the planning process by the applicant. This process has been abused with this site, where there's been ample time and warning to correct the non-compliance of the planning conditions. They've altered the site with little regard to its historic importance. They've been able to do this because the conditions imposed have not been enforced and no action has been taken when the applicant has ignored the approved plans. To now approve the current application would mean there's little point in imposing conditions on plans that they could later easily and unjustifiably be removed. This would go to undermine the public's and local council's faith in the planning process. We know that the planning officer has recommended that this application be approved with conditions. This strikes us as rather ironic and a pointless exercise when the applicant has already shown a history of totally disregarding existing conditions. The interests of proper planning need to be met and due diligence shown in refusing this planning application. Thank you for your time.
Right, thank you, Councillor Leahy. If you could just wait a moment in case some of the members have got questions for you. Are there any questions, David?
Councillor Mike Thomas, Chair.
Yeah. Over to you, Mike.
Thank you very much, Chair. Hello, Derek.
Hi.
Can you confirm that Marazion Town Council would be happy with conservation-style UPVC windows?
Yeah, the original windows did look more in keeping with the area, so I think conservation style would be more appropriate. One of our main concerns is to do with the wall as well. The fact that we pointed out in the original application that there would be probably insufficient room to go drive in and return and drive out again, but that was ignored really. When we with the wall, we always suspected that this would happen because we took measurements and photographs of it, and our suspicions have come to fruition.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, David, are there any further questions?
I can't see any, Chair, no.
Right, with that, we've got nobody from the applicant or agent or supporter, so we will go to the divisional member, which is Councillor Sue Nicholas. Over to you, Sue.
Thank you, Chairman. There's this development. It lies within, as you've just heard, Marazion's conservation area, and it's adjacent to a Grade 2 listed building. It's totally out of keeping from the outset of the plans approved, and they have been totally disregarded. There's been so many things that should have been built properly and haven't been. The front ancient wall was supposed to be retained along with the gates, and they were mostly removed when a JCB was put through that gateway. The annex is supposed to be a children's playroom stroke office at the same level as the garden, and you'll notice on those photographs or plans that in fact that suddenly became a raised annex which has got a bedroom and various other self-sufficient parts to it. So that wasn't even built in relation to the existing plans and the plans that were put forward. The windows in the property that they've built are in white UPVC, are totally out of keeping with the listed building next door to it, which I don't think we've got a photograph of. And it was supposed to be, the materials to be used were supposed to be wood, they were supposed to be sash windows, or if they thought it was too expensive in wood, then the planning officers were going to consider using high quality UPVC wood effect windows, which were supposed to be approved by the planning officer, but we never got to that point. The roof pitch is such that it doesn't look in keeping with the adjacent property. There is that horrendous looking metal chimney that has been added to it, and that is certainly not in keeping with the chimneys in the properties nearby. The whole thing has not been built in keeping with the conditions and the plans that were submitted in the beginning. And despite complaints to enforcement and to the planning officers, nothing was ever changed. Personally, I believe that the annex should be lowered and built as the original plan. The property developer should put back the main property back to the original approved plans to comply with the consents and the planning conditions. That clearly has been raised so that there's views of the mount. The town council advised right in the beginning that there would be no room for parking and turning inside the gates, and that was not taken onto consideration. There is, if you look at the picture in the bottom right hand corner, there's a wooden kind of like addition to the side of the annex, which we're told is a water cupboard or something, so we're asking for that to be put inside so that it doesn't include it outside. I agree that we've been asking for that decking to be taken away. I think that should be conditioned because I'm not convinced that that would be done, given that many of the other things that were supposed to have been done haven't been done. I would ask really that members of the committee refuse this application for the removal of all the conditions, and indeed add about that absolute removal of that decking there, and also to actually have the windows put in the way they should be put in. It's not in keeping with the conservation area. It's not been built according to the plans, and I do really think that it needs to be refused and that there should be tighter conditions imposed. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Were there any questions for Sue?
No, Chair.
No. So with that, we go on. Are there any questions for the officers?
No, don't see any. Oh, yeah. Wait a second. Councillor Kaczmarek, Chair.
Yeah. Over to you, Mark.
Yes, thank you. Reading the report, I can understand why the local member is so angry and the parish council. There's so many conditions been breached. So why has these breaches been allowed? If they've been reported to the enforcement officer and obviously the historic environment officer, why has it got this far?
Mark, did you want to answer that one, Mark Brumhead?
I can come in, Mark, if you want, or you can go. It's up to you.
Well, yeah, you can add if you feel need to, Adam. Yeah. But we, excuse me, we have got an application in front of us. When we have an application in front of us, obviously the enforcement team await the outcome of that to make sure that whether it's expedient or not to pursue any further action. Did you want to add anything, Adam?
Yeah, all I was going to say is that I think there might be a slight confusion in terms of what the expectation of enforcement is. I mean, to my mind, that we've undertaken extensive negotiations with the applicant in the attempt to address the breaches. Obviously, we haven't asked for the breaches to happen. They've happened, which has been incredibly unfortunate. But we feel it's in our interest to negotiate with them to improve and overcome the breaches rather than turn up and actually take enforcement action through a stop notice, for example. And like I say, I do hear what Councillor Nicholas is saying and the Town Council as well, but I think we feel that through negotiation we've got to a point where the development is acceptable on balance. So I'll just make that point in terms of the perceived lack of enforcement.
Right, thank you. David, have you got any other questions?
Councillor Mike Thomas, Chair.
Yeah, over to you, Mike.
Thank you very much, Chair. My question and comments are similar to Councillor Kaczmarek. The issue of compliance is a major concern. And my question to Adam is: do we have any evidence, or in other cases, and I know Mark will say that this has to be this particular case, of applicants being asked to change windows? Because I cannot see that actually happening, even though they're not compliant with what should be there. Are there powers to ask for those windows to be removed, and can enforcement really enforce it?
Well, under this application, Councillor Thomas, they're proposing timber effect white UPVC windows. We put the details have been submitted, which are on the file, and those have been secured.
Yes, I've seen those.
So that's how we're trying to get around it. They're proposing to remove the external parts of the windows and replace them with the timber effect frames. Yeah. I do hear what Councillor Nicholas is saying, and the Town Council, they would have a preference for timber windows in brown colour, but we feel that there's a variety of window colours and textures in the area, and that timber effect windows would be acceptable to us.
I agree, but my question is when this has been imposed in the past, has it actually happened?
Yeah, I can't comment on that, Councillor.
No, fair enough, but it's just my perception. Thank you.
Yeah.
Right, thank you. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, got Ben Kerr now, Chair.
Yeah, over to you, Ben.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just to say, I think Mark's already said it really, but obviously I can understand the frustrations, but enforcement is a separate process, isn't it? And we say this often at committee. You know, is it expedient to enforce? I don't know, because the enforcement team will be looking at that, and that's separate from planning. So, you know, just to reinforce what Mark and Adam have said, it wouldn't be appropriate for us to seek to penalise the applicant on this planning application.
Right, thank you. Were there any further questions, David?
No, Chair.
No. Right.
Sorry, Mark Kaczmarek popped up.
Yeah, Mark.
I just want to come back in as well. It was mentioned by the timber decking and the wood building outside, which doesn't seem to be part of any of the conditions we see on our papers here. Will that timber decking be removed and that wood building?
It should be in the conditions, Councillor Kaczmarek. I'll just look in my own report just so I can point you to it. Condition 8 talks about the platform being removed and then the made-up ground being reprofiled in accordance with the scheme to be approved. So it's condition 8 of the report?
It doesn't mention the decking, does it?
Yeah, the first point does. The platform beneath the annex hereby permitted should be reduced and enclosed in accordance with the details shown on the plan. So the plan referred to, I'll pull it up on the screen for you all to see, is this plan here, which clearly shows there's an area that says well, maybe not that plan, isn't it? There's another plan that says no decking, and we're by that condition we're securing the removal of the platform and the decking through condition 8.
Okay, thank you.
Just for clarity, I think, Adam, if we added in the platform and decking, because it says beneath the annex.
Yes. Yeah, fair enough.
Decking.
We could add that for clarity, yeah.
Right, were there any further questions?
No, Chair.
No. Right, we'll then go into committee for members' comments and hopefully a recommendation coming forward. So over to the committee members. Anybody wishing to speak?
Councillor Code.
Yeah. Right, Graham.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'm remembering at this moment very clearly my initial planning training from years ago, which covered this sort of occurrence very, very in a very, very detailed way. And it was that there is nothing in planning enforcement that is punitive on the applicant. And this is all part of a normal procedure where there has been breaches of planning condition. The council has been in significant discussion with the applicant. The buildings are actually there, they're completed, and it is almost, well, it's almost unknown for buildings to be pulled down, so that's not going to happen. We shouldn't think about what happened about breaches of the previous permission. We should just look at the information that's before us in the report and what we've been told today and judge on that basis. This building with wood effect windows and change to the annex at the back is going to just about conform with the requirements of the original permission. The fact that the gateway has been widened, well, that's fait accompli, but look at it, the section of wall that's been rebuilt that looks like a very good job has been done. I propose we accept this and allow this permission.
Right, thank you. Is there a seconder for that, for Councillor Code?
No, Chairman.
No. Right, so we go on. Are there any further speakers? Yeah.
Councillor Kaczmarek.
Yeah. Over to you, Mark.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I know it's difficult, and the more I read this, it does make me extremely cross why we've got to this situation. The thing is, we have an application before us which seeks to address and remedy the breaches that the previous application wasn't built to. So it's going to address that. If we turn it down and they win on appeal, we won't get this addressed. That's my concern. So reluctantly, I would support what Councillor Code has proposed, but also to include what I flagged up about the decking. That word decking needs to be put in there as being removed as well. So, yeah, reluctantly, I would support it because I fear, as Councillor Code has said, the building's there. This application addresses a number of the breaches that have happened, and if we don't approve it today, then I think we're at risk of having this overturned on appeal and none of these breaches to be addressed. So I would second the proposal, Chairman.
Yeah, I think it might be useful if, before we go to the vote, if Adam actually listed the breaches that will be put right by this application with the addition of the one on the decking. So could you just take us through that, Adam, please?
Yeah, no problem at all, Chair. I've tried to do that at the beginning of the report. So please, paragraphs 10 and 11, if members want to read it as I go through it. So, yeah, the alterations made to the front boundary wall. Well, I guess it's as has been pointed out before, there's been several breaches to it. And like I said, I've tried to succinctly kind of address those in paragraphs 10 and 11 before then making a detailed assessment later on. So yeah, it really concerns the wall at the front, some small changes to the side northwest openings, the chimney flue, and then the annex on the raised platform. Obviously, condition 5 required the boundary walls to be retained. That's been breached, but we believe it's been remedied. And again, they've had approval for some external materials and finishes as per condition 7 of the original, but they didn't install the windows that we approved. So again, that's one that we feel has been addressed by the submission of timber effect PVC windows in white colour. I guess it's probably easier if members just quickly review those 2 paragraphs, which aren't particularly detailed, just to fully understand what's happened, how they're proposing to be remedied. No doubt they'll be familiar with our assessment later on about why we feel is acceptable on balance.
Yeah, right. Thank you. David, we've got some further speakers.
Yes, Councillor Simmons, Jim.
Yeah. Over to you, John.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I can understand Councillor Nicholas's frustration because my parish is completely in an AONB and a conservation area, and we're all the time getting little snippets where people hasn't put the right windows in, and it always come back as expedient. I'm really quite reluctant to support it, but I think, as Councillor Kaczmarek said, if it goes through, they'll win on appeal, and we've lost everything. So I'll be reluctantly to support it.
Thank you, David. Have we got any further speakers?
Councillor Baston, Chair.
Yeah, John.
Right, thank you, Chair. Just for clarity, this stainless steel flue, would that be retained, or would there be another option for that?
Thanks, Councillor Baston. And the stainless steel flue is proposed to be retained. Apologies for it not being shown on the photographs. Like I say, it's we've got plans showing it, which I can show you here. If you look on the right hand side, you can see the stainless steel flue, which projects just above the ridge. But yeah, they're not proposing to remove it. They want to retain it. And yeah, we acknowledge the concerns that have been raised as set out in the report, but we don't feel it's so harmful to warrant us insisting it be removed.
Right, thanks very much.
Right. Any further speakers, David?
Yes, Chair. I love it. Could I make a quick comment myself?
Yes,
before, I'm sitting here feeling very frustrated, I have to say, because it looks as though I spent hours of my life, as long as many other members of the committee have, I know, and we often pass things based on the fact that conditions are going to be carried out. And it seems to me that there are occasions, and this is one of them, where they clearly haven't been carried out. And we're told, okay, well, that's a job for enforcement. That may well be true. But here again, we're being asked to approve something on the basis of a number of conditions. And I, for one, are going to find it very difficult to support this because I don't trust that it will happen or not. And then I think in an area like Marazion, which it is where it's very important that these things are in fact upheld, we should be even more careful. So I'm going to find it very difficult to support this and probably won't, Chair.
Right, thank you. We've got further speakers, David?
Yes, I have Mike Thomas.
Yeah, over to you, Mike.
Thank you. I feel exactly the way as the Deputy Chair. Do we have any knowledge as to whether the applicant has agreed to these?
Mark, you want to comment on that?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Thomas. No, but no doubt should be aware of the conditions in the report because it's been published for a couple of weeks now. We've had no indication from her that she's dissatisfied with them. We feel they're completely reasonable and, in our view, address the harm that's occurred through the breaches of the conditions.
Okay, but there's no acknowledgement that they will abide by them.
There's no formal acknowledgement. No, I mean I've had limited communication with the applicant throughout. I've mainly dealt with her professional advisors, but yeah, we have no reason to believe they've got a problem with them. We think they're completely reasonable and meet the tests. So if members are minded to support the recommendation, they would be on the permission.
Thank you. Can I just come in Chairman, on that. In terms of the conditions, obviously that will now be raised. The property's on the market, and any solicitor will point out to any prospective purchaser regarding those conditions, even if the client hasn't done them themselves by the time any sale goes forward. So I think we're in quite a strong position that it will withhold the any future, likely anyhow, unless obviously somebody is a cash buyer, to buy the property without those conditions being sorted.
Thank you, but there is a degree of trust here.
Well, I think there is with every application.
True.
Right, thank you. David, have we got any further speakers?
Yeah, Councillor Tudor, Chair.
Yeah, over to you, Dulcie.
Yeah, thank you. I got to say that I agree with the Vice Chair, Councillor Thompson. I mean, we put in a condition on an earlier application about stone walls earlier today, and even as we were saying it, I felt cynical about it. The applicant has us over a barrel, because here we are once again being told about having to weigh up the risk of appeal, and so I'm really reluctant, so reluctant to approve this. I would wonder, I mean, this will be one of the last planning meetings, won't it, before the new council? And this sort of thing comes up so many times, and in our divisions as well. And I wonder if enforcement is resourced properly, really, if that's the issue. If we have enough enforcement officers and they are resourced with enough time to check on these buildings once being built. Unless somebody's got a beady eye on everything, it seems conditions are breached all the time. So I'm still torn at this point. I'm going to watch the way the vote goes.
Thank you. David, have you got any further speakers?
Mark Broomhead's got his hand up, Chair.
Yeah, Mark.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I appreciate the frustration with for members regarding we grant something and then we put it subject to conditions, and sometimes the conditions aren't complied with. But we have to look at the application on its merits, irrespective of the past, and whether we've got enough conditions that makes the development acceptable. I mean, mention has been made of the stone wall, but obviously it's slightly wider, but I think they have done a very good job in actually rebuilding that wall. And obviously we have to look at it from a planning perspective. Is it that harmful? And with the conditions, we feel not, in terms of being able to refuse the application. If going back to Councillor Kuczmarek's recommendation, I'd just be mindful if he's happy for it to be delegated powers subject to receipt of those plans Adam referred to in his recommendation. Thank you, Chairman.
Are you happy with that, Mark Kuczmarek?
Yes, I'm happy with that wording, because I think it's important that we get this really tight on this one.
Yeah, right, thank you. Were there any further speakers, David?
No, Chair.
Yeah, right. I think, Mr. Broomhead, if you could just read out the exact wording. I think we need to be careful on this. So if you could read out the wording of the recommendation, then I'll go to Mark and his seconder to see if they're happy with it.
Right, it'd just be delegated powers as set out in the report, subject to the receipt of accurate plans to deal with the minor deficiency in the submission.
Yeah, so that would deal with the movement of the decking as well, would it?
No, the conditions already cover that. There were some technicalities. Adam, do you want to clarify the technicality?
Yeah, the technicality was just about the scaling of the annex. It was inconsistent on the two plans produced by the respective architects, and also I think one of the plans was labelled at 1 to 200 when it's 1 to 100. So we're talking minor issues that don't actually affect what's before you today. It's just to make sure it's all accurate and consistent with one another.
Yeah, right, okay. Mark, are you happy with that recommendation as read out by Mr. Broomhead?
Yeah, well, I'm not the proposer. The proposer was Councillor Cowan.
Sorry, yes, Graham. Yeah, I'll go back to Graham first.
So I'm happy.
Yeah.
Well,
Graham, are you happy with the wording?
My feelings are hurt that you forgot to actually propose this, but never mind. Yes, I'm happy.
Yeah, it went on so long. It's age related. Right. Okay, on a serious note, we get back. You've heard what Mr. Broomhead has read out. That's what's been proposed and seconded. So we'll now put it to the vote. So we'll go to Angela for the roll call.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Baston.
Against.
Councillor Robinson.
Reluctantly for.
Councillor Code.
For.
Councillor Hawkins.
Against.
Councillor Eakin-Smith.
Against.
Councillor Harding.
Against.
Councillor Hurd.
Against.
Councillor Kaczmarek.
For.
Councillor Martin.
Against.
Councillor Pascoe.
Against.
Simmons.
Against.
John Thomas.
Against.
Councillor Mike Thomas.
Against.
And Councillor Tudor.
Against.
Okay, I'll just count that up a moment. I can confirm that motion has failed by 3 votes in favour, 11 against, and no abstentions. So we don't have anything on the table now.
So, right, I think first we've got to go to Mr. Broomhead. Mr. Broomhead, having heard the debate, can you advise members on any grounds for refusal? For obviously somebody would move that shortly.
Yeah. I mean, I can once I've heard whoever proposes it on the key aspects. I mean, members can also consider whether they wish to defer it and outline their key aspects to see whether we can get further amendments that may be more satisfactory to some of the members.
Yeah,
but obviously, it's the members' choice.
Yeah, we've already, it's Angela from Democratic Services. We've already taken a vote on approval. We don't take multiple votes on approval. If members wanted to move any amendments, they should have done so before that point.
Just can I clarify, in what respect on deferral?
Oh no, if you're deferring that.
Yeah, so I didn't. Nobody mentioned approval.
Yeah, so we've got nothing on the table now. So we either need a deferral or a refusal. So is there any member that wishes to move something and speak to it? Is there any indications, David?
No one yet, Chair.
Did you want to propose something?
Yeah, I hadn't really thought through the precise detail of what I would propose, and I would certainly still propose refusal, and it's around need a bit of help on this one, Chair. I think I'm not quite sure quite how it's unusual, and it's quite difficult to be precise.
Chair, if I could interject, Ben from legal. I think we've got ourselves into a bit of a pickle there, which is why officers were suggesting that we shouldn't go down this route. Looking at the enforcement issues. So it might be that a deferral is more appropriate.
Yeah. Right. We've got several quite a few members looking to speak.
We've got Councillor Thomas. Councillor Thomas, Chair.
Yeah. Councillor Mike Thomas first, then Councillor John Thomas.
I'm happy to propose a deferment following the advice and wording of Mr. Broomhead.
Yeah.
I'll second that, Chairman.
Yeah. Okay. So,
Chairman,
on the deferment, Mark, would you like to...
Councillor Simons, Chair.
Just, thank you, Chairman. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to second it, but Councillor Thomas beat me.
Yeah. So, Mr. Broomhead, would you like to give the members some advice on the wording?
Yeah. Thank you, Chairman. If the obviously members aren't happy with a number of issues, what I would suggest is on the deferral, if they can give me a outline of what those reasons, what they aren't happy with, and what they would want us to look at further, so that we got a clear instruction to go back to the agent. There was talk of I think there was some talk of the flue, the windows, the front boundary wall, the decking. Is that my understanding correct, or it's up to the proposer and seconder?
Councillor Mike Thomas, you were first, and then it was Councillor John Thomas.
Yes, I'm particularly concerned that there is some form of conversation with the applicant, and my deferment is really for that conversation and a recognition that there will be an agreement to take things on. Some members would like to add a few more points, but my concern is that there is actual conversation. So my proposal really is for that conversation around the whole issue.
Can I just come back, Chairman?
Yes, yeah.
Let's with all due respect to Councillor Mike Thomas, thank you. The problem we've got as officers is what we don't want to go off and have a conversation or whatever. We need some specific guidelines on what members aren't happy with, so we can actually come back yes or no whether they're actually agreeable to those matters of your concern. If you understand why I've raised that, because we need to be clear in our own minds what we're supposed to be discussing and what you want us to try and achieve.
Yeah. Indeed. Perhaps Councillor John Thomas might like to add, as he seconded the deferment as well. Through you, Chair.
Right, John.
Yes, thanks very much for that, Mike. Yeah, I think really generally, I think the flue comes into it, and the windows. It's just a general overall appearance of this application. I think some improvements could be made. So I think it's a varying list of things that I'm not happy with, and I think far better design and be more sympathetic to the area could be achieved by further discussions, and that's what I would like to see, Chairman.
I agree.
Right, Mark, do you want to put some words to it so that we could progress?
We have got Councillor Hurd if we wanted to.
Yeah, right, sorry. Do you want to come in, John?
Yeah, the reason I'm against this is the people haven't complied, the applicant hasn't complied with the previous conditions. So why should we give them a chance to carry on? We need them to comply with the previous conditions that were put in the original application. And that's what should be made clear.
Can I just come on?
Yeah, right, Mark.
We can't make people comply. Obviously, we need to take enforcement action if we feel it's necessary for the breaches of the regional permission. I think what Councillor Hurd is alluding to is he feels the previous permission was satisfactory, and therefore any breaches that have occurred here are unsatisfactory. But what we need to do with enforcement is to the government make it quite clear that we should try and negotiate first. So I still think we should obviously defer the application. Listening to the proposer and seconder, they're not happy with the flue, the windows, the annex and the decking. Is that correct? Is that correct?
Yes. I mean, the issue. Sorry, Mr. Chair, may I speak?
Yes, sorry, come in.
As Councillor Hurd has quite rightly voiced, is the sense that the dialogue with the applicant, as Mr. Broomhead has indicated, that the whole point of enforcement, mitigation, compliance is about conversation, and I just don't see any evidence of that taking place. Not on our side, of course.
Yeah, Mr. Broomhead, I think to take this forward, if you could give us some suggested wording, and then I'll put it to the members.
Ben Kernow's wishes to speak, Chair.
Yeah. Well, let's see what Mark's got to say first.
All right, okay.
Well, listen to the proposer and second and taking into account some other comments that were raised. So the resolution is to defer the application to officers to negotiate amendments, in particular the flue, the windows, the annex and decking, and to look at all the other breaches, and in terms of the original permission, to see whether any further amendments can be achieved.
Right, thank you. Right, Ben, did you want to come in?
Thanks, Chair. No, I think Mark's covered it. I was just going to say, yeah, we need to have something specific to go back with, which Mark's now got. I think the applicant will be listening, won't they? So they hopefully will be able to think about the enforcement points and dialogue with us. But I agree with Mark, we can't specifically request it. But you know, you would hope that it might make them think, and that they can certainly offer anything to us, can't they, as part of this now? So that's all I'd say to reassure members, really.
Yeah. Okay then. So are you happy with that, Councillor Mike Thomas?
Yes, I'm very happy with that.
Yeah, and Councillor John Thomas?
Kerno.
Yes, Chairman, I think we got to be careful here that we don't go split this, what we're discussing, and go too much into the legal side of it for enforcement. We need to keep to what we're looking at now is the overall appearance of that structure. So I think we need to separate the two, really. And this discussions maybe come out in a favourable position and we get what we want.
Yeah. Okay, right. So I'm going to put that to the vote. It's the recommendation that's been read out for deferment with the various breaches of the conditions that have been mentioned by Mr. Broomhead. So if everybody's happy with that, I'll go to Angela to give it the roll call. So it would be for the deferment and on the reasons that's been read out by Mr. Broomhead. So over to Angela.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Baston.
4.
Councillor Robinson.
4.
Councillor Code.
Against.
Councillor Hawkins. 4. Councillor Eakin-Smith.
4.
Councillor Harding.
4.
Councillor Hurd.
4.
Councillor Kaczmarek.
Against.
Councillor Martin.
4.
Councillor Pascoe.
4.
Councillor Jones.
4.
John Thomas.
4.
Councillor Mike Thomas.
4.
Councillor Tudor. 4. Count that up. That deferral is carried by 12 votes in favour, 2 against and no abstentions.
Right, thank you. Right, so I'm going to go on to the next one before we break for lunch, because we've still got 4 items to go through. So the next one, it's item 4.5, St Clement's Hill, Little Hendra, Buscaris Road, Carbis Bay, and Chantal has taken us through that one. Can you hear me, Chantal?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you. I'm
Right,
just going to share my presentation.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, can you see that?
Yeah, we've got that and we can hear you. So once you're ready to start, it's over to you.
Thank you. So this application is one of 2 applications which are before members today. Members' attention is drawn to the addendum, which highlights comments from the agent that if this application is approved, the next item on the agenda will be withdrawn. So this application has been submitted to try and address the concerns raised regarding the next full application. Members should also note a letter of objection has been received regarding the validity of the application. Legal advice has been sought in this respect, and the application is considered to be valid. The key issues in consideration of this application are the design and visual impact upon the character and appearance of the area and residential amenity. The site, which you can see outlined in red, lies within a residential area of Carbis Bay. The site was previously occupied by a detached house known as Little Hendra, which is located centrally in the plot and surrounded by a large garden. The property has now been demolished following planning permission being allowed on appeal for its demolition and erection of 7 new dwellings and 1 replacement dwelling. To put the site into context, here's an aerial view. The house types and density varies within the area. So turning to the plans, the principle of redevelopment of the site for 8 dwellings has been established by the allowed appeal. This plan shows the proposed layout and the previously approved layout, which remains the same. The current proposal sees no changes to plots 6 to 8 at the front of the site. Plots 1 to 5 at the rear of the site, however, are to be amended by adding an additional extra floor set back from the first floor. This plan shows the proposed elevations of plot 1 to 5 and the previously approved elevations. The property would be higher than what was allowed at appeal. However, due to the sloping topography, the development is not considered to have a detrimental impact on the visual amenity. This plan shows the proposed and previously approved floor plans. And then turning to the sections, plots 1 to 5 will be approximately 21 to 22 metres from the dwellings located at Hendreth Park. And then there'll be 22 metres approximately from the other properties at Boscaris Crescent, notably this one, Chiringa, to the west. Whilst objections have been raised in respect of overlooking and overbearing, due to the separation distances, it was considered refusal could not be warranted on this ground alone. This slide shows a photo montage of the proposed development and the neighbouring development. So these are the properties in question proposed to be amended. This is the property, the Sands, then we've got Hendreth Park here, properties in Boscaris Crescent along here, and then properties known as Sand Sifters to the south, to the north, sorry. So this photo is taken stood on site, looking towards the south to the rear of the neighbouring properties in Hendreth Park. And this is a view looking towards the southeast. Neighbouring property is known as the Sands. And then this is properties within Boscaris Crescent, looking towards the west. And then a view looking towards the north, and the property is known as the Sand Sifters. And then this is the entrance to the site. Concerns have been raised regarding the access, traffic and pedestrian safety. However, the principle of development for 8 dwellings on this site has already been established. In conclusion, it's considered the increase in height would not cause any material harm to the character of the area or detrimental harm to the residential amenity. The application is therefore recommended for conditional approval. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Chantal. We have got speakers on this one. And on the objectives list, the first one is Mr. Peter Hendry. Can you hear me, Mr. Hendry?
Yes, I can hear you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. Good morning. Welcome to the committee meeting.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear. I presume everybody else can. It'll be the usual format that you'll have 3 minutes to speak. We'll give you a prompt when it's 30 seconds to left. When 30 seconds is left, and your time will start when you start speaking. So over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of the many objectors. We are challenging the legal validity of this application. The objectors therefore reserve their rights in the matter. Concerning the application, Carbis Bay community is being eroded through the amount of properties not occupied on a permanent basis, but by tourism and second homes. The case officer's words themselves, these are taken from reason number 3 on page 146. The adopted St Ives area neighbourhood plan has uniquely strong policies to achieve full-time principal residency in all new buildings to reverse the trend that I've just spoken about. Specifically, the housing objective as well as H2 are well placed to block unsuitable developments before they are built, not just try and deal with the owners found flouting planning rules after such properties have been built. On another point, The separation distance with the existing buildings has been reduced in this new application to less than the 25 metres originally submitted. The amended 3-storey buildings are both taller and closer. Their roof height will be higher than the original Little Hendra ridgeline, whereas in the allowed appeal it was very much lower. The section drawing on page 137 is merely schematic, not dimensioned, hence not to scale. The drawing in the appeal decision shows the differences much more clearly. These would be changes to the operative part of the form of appeal decision. Added to this, there is no expectation that this committee must follow precedent set in that appeal decision when considering this application. This refers to the contrary statement in the item 42 on page 168. On another point, there will be significantly increased adverse impact to the surroundings, the neighbours and the community. Also, gardens are minute for family properties. You have the tools and powers at your disposal to resolve this problem and decide this application correctly. Along with these new obvious infringements of the NDP, also including GD1, BE12, BE17, these designs are unsuitable for the full-time principal residence housing objective. These are also plenty of other reasons for respectfully not going along with the case officer's recommendation in this particular instance. Mr. Chairman, we ask that you listen and look at these most earnest objections and scrutinise every sentence of the recommendation so as not to allow further damage to the locality by allowing overbearing new buildings to be squeezed into what is an already overcrowded location, overrun with tourist-related, non-community-based housing.
3 minutes, Chairman.
Thank you for listening.
Right, thank you, Mr. Hendry. If you can just hang on a moment, just in case any members got a question for you. David, are there any questions?
No, Chairman.
No. Well, thank you very much for attending the meeting today, Mr. Hendry. Right, we now go on to town or parish councils, and Councillor Rita Late from St Ives Town Council is the next speaker. Councillor Late, are you there?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, yeah, we can hear you. We can hear you fine.
Great.
I'm quite sure that you're used to the normal format, but I will repeat it. It's 3 minutes. We'll give you a prompt at 30 seconds, and your time will start when you start speaking. So over to you.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, councillors, there's a long saga of applications for the Little Hendra site. I mean, right from 2018 onwards, St Ives Town Council has strongly objected to all the proposals for development on this site because various aspects of the applications are contrary to the neighbourhood plan, the policies GD1, BE12 and BE17. Now, the proposed layout for this development appears similar to that for a previous application, PA 18-07686, which was allowed at appeal. However, the proposal being discussed today differs from the permitted scheme in that the 5 dwellings at the top of the site, adjacent to Hendra's Park, are 3-storey instead of 2. 3 stories increases the massing of the buildings and thus increases the virtual impact of the latest proposal. The reasons for St Ives Town Council's objections to this application remain the same as for all the other schemes. It's unneighbourly, it's overdevelopment of the site, with an excessive amount of green space being lost to driveway and parking. A large proportion of what is currently or was open green space will be covered by buildings and hard landscaping, and that's contrary to NDP policy B17. Development of this site is very difficult, if not impossible, to screen by means of planting as required by GD1. Incidentally, another issue that's often raised by our town councillors is that the more windows there are in a housing development, the greater the amount of light pollution, an important factor that should now be considered when determining applications. The extant planning permission for Little Hendra is for 8 2-storey dwellings. This application is for 3-storey dwellings. It doesn't have to be granted permission simply because that previous application was successful at appeal. And I wish to point out that a previous application in 2019 for only 6 houses which included 3-storey dwellings, was refused on the grounds of being contrary to NDP policies GD1, BE12 and BE17, and also to local plan policy 12. On behalf of the local residents, I respectfully ask you to refuse this application. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Councillor Late. If you could just wait a moment, just in case we've got some questions. David, are there any questions?
No, John.
No. Right. We've got nobody for the supporters or applicants spot. So the divisional member is Councillor Linda Taylor. Are you there, Linda?
Yes, I am, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah, it'll be the usual format, 5 minutes, and after 5 minutes, we'll probably ask you to start winding up. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. On the 14th of January 2019, West Planning Committee voted unanimously to refuse this application PA 1807686 on the following grounds: that the overall layout, density and scale of the development is considered to be unacceptable as it would fail to integrate successfully with the surrounding context and would be detrimental to the character of the area. The proposal would fail to reflect local distinctiveness, nor would it integrate satisfactorily with the built environment in conflict with policies GD1, BE12 and BE17 of the St Ives Area Neighbourhood Plan, and also policies 2 and 12 of the Cornwall Local Plan and the strategic policies 2010-2013. The application, however, PA 1807686, was approved on appeal. However, the developer, not content with the ruling by the planning inspector, is now challenging that decision, which is why the application states that it is not in compliance with condition 2, which was attached to the planning permission APP/D0840. And he is now asking for, instead of having the recommended 2-storey plots, he wants to increase them to 3 stories on plots 1 to 5. I actually want to ask the committee to uphold the planning inspector's actual decision that was made, and that you refuse this application as it does not adhere to the conditions set out actually by the planning inspector when he made his decision. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Linda. Are there any questions for Linda? David?
No, Chairman.
No. Right, thank you. So we go on to, are there any questions of the officers?
Councillor Hawkins, Chair.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Over to you, Helen.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to ask, are the objections raised by the NDP and also the planning inspector, can we refuse on those grounds? We were told in the presentation that there weren't strong enough grounds, but that was strong evidence from NDP and from the planning inspector. Thank you.
Yeah, I think there might be a slight confusion. The planning inspector obviously dealt with the application in front of him. Hence, that's why there's a standard plans condition put on. That was all he looked at. This is obviously a new application that we have to look at completely on its own merits. We've set out the reasons why we don't feel we can support a refusal. We weren't particularly, obviously, the previous scheme was refused. Unfortunately, the appeal was lost, so we have got the fallback position. So what you're really looking at is the extra story on those dwellings to the rear, which obviously we've set out in a report why we feel we can't hold a refusal. And I think if you look at the surrounding area, there's a vast mixture of developments of substantial size.
Right,
so you feel that the NDP argument just simply wouldn't cover this issue?
Well, obviously the policies are there, and obviously the town council have raised that point, but we don't think it would be strong enough to refuse the application as set out in the report.
Thank you.
Thank you. David, are there any further questions?
Councillor Nicholas, Chair.
Yeah, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's very much on the lines that Helen has come in on, that if the NDP, if it fails to meet policies under the NDP, and we're told that those policies are supposed to be strong in terms of planning, then I don't understand why it's against that policy. And also, it's becoming evident to me that when an appeal inspector makes a decision, we don't seem to be actually complying with the conditions that the appeal inspectors make. There's always a reason why it should be changed or it shouldn't be changed. So I'm just wondering exactly why we don't put significant weight on the decisions that appeal inspectors make.
Yeah, Mark?
Yeah, I think that just to clarify the matter, the appeal inspector put a condition on saying in accordance with the approved plans. That was what he was looking at the time, and that's all he did look at. There's nothing to stop a developer having another thought about their site, and they've now put forward a different proposal, hence the current application. So it's not non-compliance with those conditions, it's a separate new application that is developers decided to look at an alternative scheme.
Which really makes decisions by appeal inspectors virtually null and void then.
Well, no, I don't. Sorry, with all due respect, I don't agree with you on that. They've made a decision, and obviously it got allowed, which was unfortunate in terms of the neighbourhood plan and the local population. But that is a fallback position. So the developer, and it's not that rare, a developer can have different thoughts on looking at the site again and come in with a different scheme. But we need to take that fallback position into account, which is quite significant.
Right, so the fallback position then would be 2 stories, yeah?
Yeah, correct.
Thank you.
Right, thank you. David, have we got any further speakers?
No further questions, Chair.
No further questions. Did any of the officers have any questions or any comments they wanted to make?
No.
Okay.
No. Okay. So we'll take it into committee then. Oh, sorry, Councillor Taylor, did you want to ask a question? You won't be able to ask it in committee.
No, thank you, Chair. I'm looking forward to listening to the debate. Thank you.
Sorry, it was just flashing on my screen. Sorry about that. Okay, we'll go into committee and then it's over to the members and open it up for debate and hopefully a recommendation at the end of it. Have we got any takers, David?
Not yet, Chair. Nope. Councillor Nicholas.
Thank you, Chair. I might as well start. I think the impact that the third stories are going to have on properties surrounding it is going to be quite significant, and it doesn't seem to be in keeping with the NDP. So if we can have the fallback position, which is what the planning inspector agreed, which is 2-story, then I'm prepared to go with that. Thank you.
Yeah. So you're recommending that? You're proposing that?
I propose that we refuse this one so that the fallback position of 2 stories can be implemented.
Yeah. Mr. Bruno, would you like to comment on that before I ask for a seconder?
Yeah, I meant, I'm assuming Councillor Nicholas was concerned with the scale of the development and the impact on the outlook from the neighbours at the rear. But I can add further to that, Chairman, before, if we have a seconder.
Yeah. Okay. Is there a seconder for that?
I've got several speakers.
I will.
Yeah, Richard.
Councillor Hurd.
Yeah. And the reason I'm seconding it is because if you read the appeal decision, paragraph 8, he says the dwellings would be relatively low level with flat roofs. Another story on it just goes straight against the appeal, doesn't it? So I will second it. Thank you.
Right, so that's been proposed and seconded. Right, David, we've got further speakers?
Yes, Councillor Robinson.
Yeah, I was just beaten to the button in trying to second it. Last time around, I voted against this, really based on everything that's already been presented by the Town Council and by Councillor Taylor. The inspector obviously decided that I and the rest of us were wrong, and I understand that, I respect that, but to simply come back having one had their day in court and won, I find it really somewhat insulting to come back and slap another story on the rearmost buildings. So they've got a planning permission, as it's just been pointed out, as a fallback position, and they should get on and develop it to that plan.
Right, thank you. We've got further speakers, David?
No, Chair.
No. Right. So you know what we've got proposed and seconded, Mr. Broomhead. Did you want to?
Okay. For the proposed and second, as listening to yourselves, and I've added in some properties.
Can we take a vote?
Sorry.
No, I think somebody's still got their microphone on.
Okay, if you correct me if I've not picked up on your points, the overall scale of the development is considered to be unacceptable, as it would fail to integrate successfully with the surrounding context and would be detrimental to the character of the area. The proposal would fail to reflect local distinctiveness, nor would it integrate satisfactorily with the built environment. The site in mass and scale would unacceptably impair the outlook from within the rear-facing rooms and gardens of the occupiers of Buscaris Crescent and Hendris Park. The proposal is in conflict with policies GD1, BE12 and BE17 of the St Ives Neighbourhood Plan, policies 1, 2 and 12 of the Cornwall Local Plan, and paragraphs 8, 127, 130 and 131 of the MPPF.
Right, thank you. Councillor Nicholas, Councillor Hurd, are you happy with that?
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah. Did anybody wish to make any further comments? No. So we'll put it to a vote. The vote would be for refusal on the grounds that have been read out by Mr. Broomhead. So I'll pass it over to Angela for the roll call.
Thank you. Councillor Bastin.
For.
Councillor Robinson.
For.
Councillor Code.
For.
Councillor Hawkins.
For.
Councillor Eakin-Smith.
For.
Councillor Harding.
For.
Councillor Hurd.
For.
Councillor Kaczmarek.
For.
Councillor Martin.
For.
Councillor Nicholas.
For.
Asco.
For.
Councillor Simmons.
For.
Councillor John Thomas.
For.
Councillor Mike Thomas.
For.
And Councillor Tudor.
For.
I can confirm that that's unanimous, Chairman, for the refusal.
Right, thank you. So it's Mr. Broomhead, we'll have to take 4-6 when we next.
Yeah, obviously, just to clarify for members, item 4.6 is obviously an even larger development in terms of its massing. So you need to be mindful of what decisions you've just made.
Yes.
So
yeah, well, I'm minded. We're obviously going to have to go into the afternoon session. So I think we'll take sort of half an hour lunch break, and then we'll come back on that one because we've still got 3 items to deal with. So I think that would be easiest. We'll take sort of half an hour's lunch break. And Angela, can you time it and call us back?
Yes, according to me, we're all due back at 1:50.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Noodling time is slightly different again, but I'll go along with you. Right.
My apologies, Chair. I'm going to have to leave the meeting now.
Yes, okay, thank you very much.
My apologies too, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Ellen.
I think I'd better leave the meeting as well, Chair, as I don't think it'll just be 10 minutes, will it?
No, well, we've got 3 other items, so it's obviously going to go in the afternoon session.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your attendance.
Yeah, I'm off to a funeral.
Yeah, right.
Thank you.
Right, so if I could just remind members, it's probably best to mute your microphone and keep your camera switched off. And if we could be back fairly prompt, Angela said it's 1:50. So if we're ready to go at 1:50, that would be helpful. Thank you.